I never imagined my own mother would orchestrate the ultimate betrayal. Standing in my childhood bedroom, I overheard her telling my boyfriend James, "Sarah is stronger than Marilyn, better for you in every way." My sister's laugh echoed through the thin walls as she agreed. 3 years together, and James was nodding along to their plan. My heart shattered into pieces I couldn't count. That night changed everything, setting me on a path that would lead to the most spectacular reversal of fortune. Life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. 3 years ago, I thought I had found my forever person at a charity fundraiser for childhood cancer research. The ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers, and I was there representing my company trying to network despite feeling like a small fish in a very large pond. That's when James walked up to me at the silent auction table. "You've been staring at that Napa Valley weekend package for 10 minutes, he said with a warm smile that reached his hazel eyes. "Either you really love wine or you're trying to avoid the crowd like I am." I laughed immediately at ease with this stranger in a perfectly tailored navy suit. Maybe both I'm Marilyn and I'm definitely better with spreadsheets than small talk. "James Sullivan," he replied, extending his hand. "And I completely understand. I'm in construction management, and my idea of networking usually involves hard hats and blueprints, not bow ties and champagne." We spent the rest of the evening tucked away in a corner discussing everything from our shared love of hiking to our mutual inability to understand modern art. He was refreshingly genuine, asking thoughtful questions about my work as a junior marketing coordinator at Preston & Associates. When I explained my latest campaign for a sustainable fashion brand, his eyes lit up with genuine interest rather than the glazed politeness I usually encountered. "You're passionate about what you do," he observed. "That's rare. Most people at these things just talk about their titles and vacation homes." Our first official date happened a week later at a cozy Italian restaurant in North Beach. James showed up with a single sunflower, explaining that roses seemed too cliché for someone as unique as me. Over homemade pasta and wine, we discovered more common ground. We both came from middle-class families, valued hard work, and dreamed of building something meaningful with our lives. The relationship progressed naturally without the games or pretense I'd experienced in past relationships. Saturday mornings meant exploring different farmers markets throughout the city. James would pick out ingredients while I chatted with vendors, and then we'd spend afternoons in his apartment kitchen experimenting with new recipes. He taught me how to properly dice onions without crying, and I introduced him to the joy of perfectly organized spice racks. Meeting each other's families came about 6 months in. I was nervous about introducing him to my parents, Eleanor and Robert, and my younger sister, Sarah. We decided on a Sunday dinner at my childhood home in Millbrae, a modest 2-story house where I'd grown up. Mother had outdone herself with pot roast and all the fixings using her good china that only came out for special occasions. "So, James," my mother began as she passed the green beans, "Marilyn tells us you're in construction management. That must be quite demanding." "It definitely keeps me busy, Mrs. Patterson," James replied respectfully, "but I enjoy the challenge of bringing projects from blueprint to reality. There's something satisfying about creating something tangible." My father, a quiet man who worked as an accountant, nodded approvingly. "Good to work with your hands. I spend too much time behind a desk myself. Built a workshop in the garage to compensate." "I'd love to see it sometime," James said, and I could tell he meant it. I'm always interested in different woodworking techniques. Sarah, 24 to my 26, had been uncharacteristically quiet during dinner. She worked part-time at a boutique while figuring out her next steps, having dropped out of community college twice. When she finally spoke, her tone was friendly enough. "It's nice to finally meet the guy who's been monopolizing my sister's weekends," she said with a laugh. "I was starting to think she'd made you up." The evening went smoothly with James fitting into our family dynamic like he'd always been there. Mother seemed particularly taken with him, praising his manners and asking about his family background. His parents lived in Sacramento, his father in the same construction business, his mother a retired school teacher. Respectable, stable, ambitious, but not threateningly so. everything Eleanor valued. As months passed, James became a fixture at family gatherings. He helped Dad organize the garage workshop, installing new shelving and a proper workbench. During holiday dinners, he carved the turkey and complimented Mother's cooking with just the right amount of enthusiasm. Sarah would chat with him about movies and music, and they discovered a shared appreciation for obscure jazz musicians that I pretended to understand. Our relationship deepened through shared experiences and mutual support. When I struggled with a particularly demanding client, James would listen patiently, offering practical advice without trying to solve everything for me. When his company faced delays on a major project, I helped him prepare presentations that clearly communicated timeline adjustments to stakeholders. We were partners in the truest sense, each making the other stronger. Weekend trips to Carmel wine tasting in Sonoma, lazy Sunday brunches in Palo Alto. Every memory we created felt like another brick in the foundation of our future together. His apartment gradually accumulated my belongings, a toothbrush, then a drawer of clothes, then my favorite coffee mug. My place similarly showed signs of his presence, his reading glasses on my nightstand, his jacket on my coat hook, his preferred beer in my fridge. By our second anniversary, talk of the future became more concrete. We'd walk through different San Francisco neighborhoods imagining where we might live together. James would point out good school districts for someday, and I'd note proximity to public transportation for our eventual commutes. These conversations felt natural, inevitable, like we were simply acknowledging what we both knew was coming. "Your mother called me yesterday," James mentioned one evening as we cooked dinner together in his kitchen. "She wanted my opinion on what to get you for your birthday." "That's sweet of her," I said, stirring the risotto. "What did you tell her?" "That you'd mentioned wanting a new laptop bag for work, the leather one you saw in that shop in Hayes Valley." I smiled at his attention to detail. "You remember everything, don't you?" "When it comes to you, yes," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I want to know everything about you, Marilyn. What makes you happy? What worries you? What you dream about?" The security of our relationship allowed me to be vulnerable in ways I never had before. I told him about my struggles with feeling overshadowed by Sarah. Growing up, how Mother always seemed to coddle her while pushing me to be independent. He shared his own insecurities about living up to his father's legacy in the construction business. We built trust through these exchanges, creating a safe space within our relationship. Family dinners became a regular occurrence, usually twice a month. The routine was comfortable: arrive at 6, help Mother in the kitchen while James and Dad discussed projects in the garage, eat at 7, then gather in the living room for coffee and dessert. Sarah would usually arrive late, apologizing profusely before launching into stories about difficult customers or her latest career idea. One particular dinner stood out in retrospect, though it seemed ordinary at the time. Mother had made her famous lasagna, and we were all seated around the dining table. The conversation flowed naturally until Mother asked Sarah about her plans. "I'm thinking about getting certified as a yoga instructor," Sarah announced. "The boutique is fine, but I want something more fulfilling." "That sounds wonderful, honey," Mother cooed. "You've always been so graceful and athletic. I'm sure you'd be perfect at it." Then she turned to me. "And Marilyn, how's that big project at work? Still keeping you at the office until all hours?" "Actually, I think we're going to land the Anderson account," I said proudly. My presentation really resonated with their team. "Well, don't work too hard," Mother said, her tone carrying a note of something I couldn't quite identify. "You don't want to burn out before you're 30. Balance is important." I noticed her glance at James, then a quick look that seemed meaningful, though I couldn't decipher it. Sarah had been asking James about his favorite yoga studios, and he was politely engaging, mentioning that physical fitness was important in his line of work. "You should come to a class with me sometime," Sarah suggested brightly. "It's great for preventing construction-related injuries." "Maybe we could all go together," I interjected, not thinking much of it. "Make it a group thing." But now, during a family dinner 3 months later, I noticed things had shifted. It was subtle at first, like the way Mother insisted Sarah sit next to James instead of me. "Marilyn, honey, you helped me bring in the plates. Sarah, keep James company." I watched from the kitchen doorway as my sister leaned in close to show James something on her phone, her hand briefly touching his arm. Their laughter carried through the house, and something cold settled in my stomach. When I returned to the table, the conversation stopped abruptly, both of them looking almost guilty. "What's so funny?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, just this video from the yoga studio," Sarah said quickly. "You probably wouldn't find it as amusing. It's kind of an inside joke now." Inside joke. Since when did my boyfriend have inside jokes with my sister? I caught James's eye, but he looked away suddenly, very interested in his mashed potatoes. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and meaningful looks I was clearly not meant to catch. Mother presided over it all with an expression of satisfaction that made my skin crawl, while Dad remained oblivious, discussing his latest woodworking project with anyone who would listen. The changes crept in like fog rolling over the bay, so gradual that I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Over the next few months, what started as subtle shifts became impossible to ignore. Mother's comments about my appearance grew more frequent, and cutting always delivered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Marilyn, darling, are you sure that blazer is flattering?" she'd say when I arrived for Sunday dinner. "It makes you look, well, a bit severe. Sarah, show your sister that adorable jacket you got from the boutique. Much more feminine." Sarah would model whatever outfit Mother praised, usually something form-fitting that showed off the results of her new yoga practice. She'd gained a toned physique and a confidence that seemed to appear overnight. Meanwhile, my professional wardrobe, carefully curated for boardrooms and client meetings, suddenly became evidence of letting myself go. "When's the last time you went to the gym?" Mother asked one evening as I reached for a second helping of dessert. "I know work is demanding, but men appreciate women who take care of themselves. James works out religiously, doesn't he?" "I run 3 times a week." I defended myself, but the damage was done. The chocolate cake turned to ash in my mouth. James's behavior shifted too, though he always had reasonable explanations. Late nights at the office became routine with construction emergencies that seemed to arise exclusively during our planned date nights. "I'm sorry, babe," he'd text. "Pipe burst at the Meridian site. Have to coordinate the emergency crew. Rain check." I'd spend Friday nights alone Chinese takeout containers accumulating on my coffee table while I worked on presentations. When I'd text to check in, responses came slowly, sometimes not at all. Saturday mornings, once sacred for our farmers, market adventures now found him sleeping and exhausted from his late nights. Or so he said. The coincidences piled up in ways that defied probability. Sarah suddenly developed an intense interest in craft beer, James's longtime hobby. She'd show up to family dinners with obscure bottles from microbreweries, engaging him in detailed discussions about hop varieties and fermentation processes. When had my sister, who used to drink exclusively vodka sodas, become a beer connoisseur? James recommended this amazing place in the Mission. Sarah gushed one evening, pouring amber liquid into glasses. "They have a tasting flight that's absolutely incredible." "When did you go to the Mission together?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, I ran into him during lunch last week," Sarah said breezily. "He was meeting a client nearby. Wasn't that lucky?" Lucky, right. Just like it was lucky that Sarah had suddenly discovered a passion for jazz music, specifically the experimental artists James collected on vinyl. She dropped names like Pharoah Sanders and Alice Coltrane into conversation, watching James's face light up with recognition and approval. My work achievements, once celebrated by my family, became footnotes in conversations dominated by Sarah's latest endeavors. The night I landed the Morrison Industries account, a coup that had my boss talking about fast-tracking my promotion, Mother barely looked up from her plate. "That's nice, dear. Sarah, tell everyone about your yoga certification ceremony next month. We're all so proud of you for finding your calling." I sat there, my major professional victory dismissed in a single breath, while Sarah described in exhaustive detail the spiritual journey of becoming a certified instructor. James listened with rapt attention, asking questions about her teaching philosophy and future plans. When I tried to steer conversation back to how the Morrison deal would revolutionize our agency's portfolio, Mother actually interrupted me. "Marilyn, we get it. Work, work, work. Some of us appreciate that there's more to life than climbing the corporate ladder." The sting of her words was amplified by James's silence. Once he would have defended me, celebrated my ambition. Now he simply reached for another helping of potatoes, avoiding my gaze. I found myself confiding in Lisa during our lunch breaks, needing someone outside the situation to validate that I wasn't losing my mind. We sat in our favorite cafe near the office, picking at salads, while I unloaded my concerns. "Maybe I'm being paranoid," I said for the 100th time. "It's probably just stress from work making me see things that aren't there." Lisa, ever the loyal friend, listened with the patience of a saint. "Your feelings are valid, Marilyn. Trust your instincts. Has James given you any concrete reason to worry?" "That's just it. Everything has a reasonable explanation. He's working late on legitimate projects. Sarah running into him was coincidental. Mother has always been critical. But when you add it all up..." "The pattern bothers you," Lisa finished. "Have you talked to James directly about how you're feeling?" I had tried multiple times, but conversations about my concerns were met with gentle gaslighting disguised as reassurance. "Your sister is just trying to find herself," James would say, pulling me close. "I'm being polite, engaging with her interests. Would you prefer I ignore her?" "Of course not. It just seems like you two have gotten very close very quickly." "We're going to be family someday," he'd respond, kissing my forehead. "Isn't it good that I get along with your sister and your mom means well? She's just looking out for you in her own way." His responses always made me feel petty and insecure. What kind of girlfriend complained about her boyfriend being nice to her family? But the unease persisted, especially when I noticed other changes. James's phone, once casually left anywhere, now never left his side. When texts came through during our time together, he'd glance quickly and flip the phone face down without responding. Natural behavior for work messages, perhaps, but the frequency seemed excessive. The universe seemed determined to feed my suspicions. One Thursday evening, I left work early with a pounding headache. Instead of going straight home, I decided to stop by the pharmacy near Sarah's apartment for some aspirin. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for my evening. There, parked directly in front of Sarah's building, was James's distinctive blue truck with the Sullivan Construction logo on the side. My headache forgotten, I sat in my car frozen with indecision. It was 11:30 at night. What possible reason could he have for being here when he'd texted me 2 hours ago about a work emergency keeping him at the office? I waited 45 minutes watching the entrance, my heart performing acrobatics in my chest. Finally, James emerged alone, running his hand through his hair in a gesture I recognized as stress. He looked around furtively before getting in his truck and driving away. I followed at a distance until he turned toward his own apartment, then sat in a grocery store parking lot trying to process what I'd seen. The next morning, I chose confrontation over silence. I called James before work, my voice carefully neutral. "How did the emergency go last night? You must be exhausted." "Yeah, it was rough," he said, and I could hear him yawning. "Didn't get home until after midnight." "That's terrible. Which site was it again?" A pause. "The Meridian Building. Why?" "Just wondering if I should avoid that area during my lunch meeting today. Construction mess and all." "Oh yeah, good thinking. Hey, I've got to run to a morning meeting. Love you." "Love you too," I replied automatically, though the words felt hollow. I hung up and immediately called Lisa. "I need an emergency coffee before work. Something happened." We met at a Starbucks halfway between our apartments. I told her about seeing James's truck, about his lie. Lisa's expression grew increasingly concerned as I spoke. "Marilyn, this isn't normal. You're not being paranoid. Something is definitely going on." "But what if there's an explanation? What if Sarah really did have some crisis and he didn't want to worry me?" "At midnight, and why lie about being at a work site?" Lisa shook her head. "You need to start protecting yourself emotionally. Document these incidents, trust your gut. Her advice made sense, but part of me desperately wanted to cling to reasonable explanations. This was James, the man who remembered how I took my coffee, who sent me funny memes during stressful workdays, who had spent 2 years building a life with me. There had to be an explanation that didn't involve betrayal. But as days turned to weeks, the evidence mounted. Sarah's Instagram, once filled with selfies and boutique fashion, now featured in suspicious number of places James and I had discovered together. The hidden speakeasy in Chinatown where he'd taken me for our anniversary. The hiking trail in Muir Woods we'd claimed as our spot. Each post was carefully captioned to seem solo, but I noticed shadows in photos that looked suspiciously like a tall male companion. The family dynamics grew more toxic with each gathering. Mother's criticisms evolved from subtle to overt, especially when James was present. "Sarah's really glowing lately, isn't she?" Mother commented during one particularly painful dinner. "Exercise and happiness will do that. Marilyn, you look tired. Those bags under your eyes are aging you." "I've been working on a major campaign," I started to explain. "Always an excuse." Mother cut me off. "Sarah manages to work and maintain her appearance. Some people just have different priorities, I suppose." I looked to James for support, but he was deep in conversation with Sarah about a new brewery opening in Oakland. My father, as usual, seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, contentedly eating his pot roast and occasionally commenting on the weather. The final straw came during what should have been a celebration. I'd received notification that my Morrison Industries campaign had won a regional advertising award. This was huge, the kind of recognition that could catapult my career to the next level. I rushed home to share the news with James, who I knew had taken the day off. His apartment was empty, but his laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I went to close it. We respected each other's privacy. But a notification popped up that made my blood freeze. A text message from Sarah visible on his synchronized devices. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait until we can stop sneaking around. Mom says just a little longer." I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Mom says just a little longer. My mother was not only aware of whatever was happening between James and Sarah, she was orchestrating it. The confrontation with James that evening remains vivid in my memory like a scene from a movie I've watched too many times. He walked through the door at 6:30, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. The normalcy of it all made my discovered knowledge burn hotter in my chest. "Hey babe, I got your usual. Pad CEW extra vegetables, medium spice," he said, setting the bags on the counter. "Figured we could celebrate your award properly." So he did remember. That made everything worse somehow. "Where were you today?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Running errands, Jim. Stopped by the hardware store for some stuff for your dad's workshop project." He busied himself getting plates, not meeting my eyes. "Why?" "Try again." He froze a plate suspended in midair. "What do you mean?" I saw the text, James, from Sarah. The plate clattered onto the counter. His face cycled through emotions. Surprise, guilt, then settling on defensive indignation. "You went through my laptop." "That's your concern right now, not the fact that you're sneaking around with my sister." "It's not what you think," he said, the classic refrain of the caught. "Marilyn, please let me explain. Explain what that last night was incredible, that my mother is helping you. Please, James, I'm dying to hear this explanation." He slumped against the counter, suddenly looking exhausted. "It's complicated, then uncomplicated. Sarah's been going through a tough time," he began, and I almost laughed at the predictability of it. "She came to me for advice about a guy she was seeing, someone who was stringing her along. We met up a few times to talk. At midnight, she was upset. I couldn't just ignore her. And my mother's involvement." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Your mom thought it would be better if you didn't know. She said you had enough stress with work and that Sarah was embarrassed about the situation. So everyone in my family decided to lie to me for my own good." "We weren't lying, we were protecting you." The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced. If I hadn't seen that text with my own eyes, I might have believed him. Part of me wanted to believe him even now. What exactly was so incredible about last night, James? That's not what it sounds like. Sarah was grateful for the advice. She was being effusive. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Every word you say is making this worse. We stood in silence, the Thai food growing cold between us. The apartment that had felt like a second home now seemed foreign, hostile. I noticed things I'd apparently been blind to. A yoga mat in the corner that wasn't mine, a brand of tea in the cupboard I didn't drink, a book about craft brewing on the coffee table with Sarah's bookmark peeking out. How long? I asked finally. Marilyn, how long have you been meeting with my sister behind my back? A couple of months, but it really was innocent at first. Your mom suggested I help Sarah with her confidence issues, said I was a good influence. My mother's manipulation spread out before me like a roadmap. Create opportunities for James and Sarah to bond. Criticize me while praising Sarah. Plant seeds of doubt about my priorities, my appearance, my ambition, all while maintaining the facade of maternal concern. You need to leave, I said quietly. Can we please talk about this rationally? You're jumping to conclusions. The only conclusion I'm jumping to is that I can't trust you or my family. Get out. He gathered his things slowly as if hoping I'd change my mind. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I do love you, Marilyn. If this is love, I'll pass. After he left, I called in sick to work the next day and spent it in bed, alternating between crying and staring at the ceiling. Lisa came over with ice cream and tissues, letting me rant without judgment. But I knew I couldn't hide forever. I needed answers, and I'd only get them from the source. I drove to my parents' house on Saturday morning, finding my mother alone in her garden, pruning roses with the focus of a surgeon. She looked up when my shadow fell across her flowers, and something flickered in her eyes. Not surprise, but calculation. Marilyn, you look terrible. We need to talk. She sighed, setting down her pruning shears. I suppose James told you about helping Sarah. Is that what we're calling it? We moved inside, sitting at the kitchen table where so many family memories had been made. The same table where she'd taught me to roll pie crust, where I'd done homework, where James had charmed everyone with his stories. Now it felt like an interrogation room. You've been orchestrating this, I said, not a question, but a statement. My mother didn't insult me with denials. Instead, she calmly made herself tea, the ritual of it giving her time to organize her thoughts. When she finally sat across from me, her expression was serene, unrepentant. Orchestrating is a very dramatic word, Marilyn. Then what would you call it? Looking out for my children's futures. She sipped her tea thoughtfully. You've always been the strong one, independent, driven, capable. You don't need a man like James. That's not your decision to make. Isn't it? I'm your mother. I see things you don't. James wants a traditional family, a wife who will prioritize home over career, children over ambition. That's not you. Again, not your decision. But it is Sarah, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. She needs someone stable, successful. She doesn't have your advantages, your intelligence, your drive. What's she going to do with her life without a good husband? The casual cruelty of her assessment took my breath away. So you decided to give her mine. He was never truly yours, darling. You were borrowing him until he found what he really wanted. I simply helped him see that Sarah could give him the life he envisions. Sunday dinners, multiple children, a wife who adores him without challenging him. You don't think I adore him. You love him, certainly, but you love your career more. I've watched you choose work over James repeatedly. Late nights at the office instead of home. Business trips instead of vacations. Even your award. Your first thought was how it would advance your career, not how it would affect your future family. Because I'm 26, I'm building a career, not retiring to raise babies. Exactly my point. She smiled sadly as if I'd proven her case. Sarah is ready for that life now. James is 30. He doesn't want to wait 5 or 10 years for you to be ready. If you truly loved him, you'd want him to be happy. This is insane. You've been manipulating all of us. I've been guiding my children toward happiness. Someday when you're wildly successful and alone in your corner office, you'll thank me for saving you from a life that would have suffocated you. And if I'm not grateful, her expression hardened slightly, then you're not as smart as I thought. James and Sarah are well suited. They share interests, values, goals. Their relationship has developed naturally. With your help. With my encouragement, there's a difference. Does Dad know about this? She waved dismissively. Your father concerns himself with his workshop and his numbers. He trusts me to handle family matters. As if summoned, I heard my father's truck in the driveway. He entered through the garage, sawdust in his hair, whistling tunelessly. His face brightened when he saw me, then fell as he registered the tension. Marilyn, what's wrong, sweetheart? I looked at my mother, wondering if she'd spin her web of lies for him too, but she simply stood smoothing her gardening apron. Marilyn and James have decided to take a break, she said smoothly. She's understandably upset. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Dad moved to hug me, and I let him breathing in the familiar scent of wood shavings and aftershave. These things happen. You'll work it out. Actually, Dad, I started but caught my mother's eye. There was something there, a warning or a promise. I thought of their 40-year marriage, of my father's simple contentment, of how devastating the truth might be to him. Thanks, Dad, I said instead. I'll be okay. But later, when Mother was inside starting dinner, Dad found me sitting on the porch steps. He sat beside me, his knees creaking slightly. Want to tell me what really happened? I looked at him in surprise. You know, he sighed deeply. I'm not as oblivious as everyone thinks. I've seen your mother pushing Sarah and James together, heard some of the comments, noticed the setups. And you didn't say anything. What could I say? Your mother, she has strong opinions about what's best for you girls. Fighting her on this would have meant... He trailed off, but I understood. Fighting her meant risking his marriage, his peaceful life, his workshop sanctuary. She threatened you. Not in so many words, but I've been married long enough to know when to pick my battles. This wasn't one I could win. He put his hand over mine. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have warned you. It's not your fault, Dad. We sat in silence watching the neighbor's cat stalk a bird across the lawn. Finally, he spoke again. You know you don't have to follow the path she sets for you. You're stronger than she thinks. Stronger than Sarah, too, no matter what your mother tells that boy. It was the closest he'd come to outright criticism of my mother, and I treasured it like a gift. The next few weeks passed in a blur of pain and humiliation. James made it official, ending our 3-year relationship with a phone call that lasted less than 10 minutes. He cited growing apart and different life goals, never acknowledging the betrayal or manipulation. Within days, he and Sarah were seen together publicly, my mother's planted seeds bearing poisonous fruit. I threw myself into work, but even that sanctuary was tainted. News of my breakup spread through social circles, and I caught pitying looks from colleagues. Worse were the whispers that followed me, how I'd been so focused on my career that I'd lost my man to my own sister. My mother, it seemed, had been laying groundwork beyond our family, painting a picture of me as cold and ambitious, too driven for domestic happiness. Did you know Eleanor's been telling people you turned down James's proposal because you didn't want to get married until you made partner, Lisa asked during lunch one day. He never proposed. I know that, but the damage is done. She's crafted this whole narrative where you chose career over love, and poor James had no choice but to find comfort with Sarah. The unfairness of it all made me want to scream. I'd been painted as the villain in my own story, the ambitious shrew who'd driven away a good man with her selfish focus on success. Meanwhile, Sarah and James were the star-crossed lovers brought together by fate and familial understanding. The final humiliation came at my cousin Amy's wedding 3 weeks later. I'd considered skipping, but that felt like admitting defeat. So I put on my best dress, styled my hair, and walked into that reception hall with my head high. I should have known my mother would orchestrate even this. Sarah and James were already there when I arrived, seated at what should have been my table. Sarah wore a dress I recognized, one she'd borrowed from me months ago and never returned. They were holding hands openly, his thumbs stroking her knuckles in a gesture achingly familiar. Marilyn. My Aunt Ruth bustled over her face, a mask of sympathy. "How are you holding up? Dear Eleanor told us about, well, everything. It must be so hard seeing them together, but you're handling it with such grace." I murmured something appropriate, though I wanted to ask exactly what everything my mother had told them. Throughout the cocktail hour, relative after relative approached with similar condolences, each adding another piece to the picture my mother had painted. I was the workaholic who'd neglected poor James. Sarah was the gentle soul who'd helped him heal. My mother was the wise matriarch who'd seen the truth and guided everyone toward happiness. "Such a shame," Cousin Margaret whispered loudly to her daughter. "Marilyn's always been so focused on that career. Some women just aren't meant for marriage." During dinner, I was seated at a table with distant relatives and family friends, pointedly separated from the main family table where James sat in what should have been my place. I watched my mother beam at them, touching James's shoulder, affectionately, leaning in to whisper something that made Sarah giggle. The perfect family tableau with me edited out like a mistake in a photograph. "You know, dear," an elderly great-aunt said to me over dessert, "there's still time to find someone. You're pretty enough even if you are getting a bit old. Maybe try to smile more. Men don't like women who look so serious all the time." I excused myself and spent 10 minutes crying in a bathroom stall, my carefully applied makeup running in rivers down my cheeks. When I emerged, having repaired what damage I could, Patricia Hawthorne was waiting by the sinks. Patricia was a legend in our industry, the founder and CEO of Hawthorne Communications. I'd met her briefly at conferences, but never imagined she knew who I was. Yet here she stood elegant in navy silk, studying me with shrewd eyes. "Rough night?" she asked, handing me a tissue. "You could say that." "I saw the performance out there. Quite the production your family's staged." I looked at her in surprise. "You noticed?" "I notice everything. It's why I'm successful." She refreshed her lipstick with practiced efficiency. "I also noticed you won the Morrison Award. Impressive work for someone so junior." "Thank you." "How would you like to be less junior? I'm opening a San Francisco branch. I need someone hungry to run it, someone with nothing keeping them here." My heart stopped. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an escape hatch disguised as an opportunity. Interested?" I thought of James and Sarah, of my mother's machinations, of the narrative that had been written without my consent. Then I thought of San Francisco, of possibility of writing my own story. "Yes, absolutely yes." Patricia smiled. "Good. We'll talk Monday. For now, go back out there and pretend everything's fine. The best revenge is success, and we're going to make you very successful indeed." I returned to the reception with new purpose. When relatives offered condolences, I smiled and spoke of exciting career developments. When Sarah caught my eye across the dance floor, I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast. When my mother cornered me near the cake table, I kissed her cheek and thanked her for always pushing me toward my dreams. "What are you playing at?" she hissed. "Nothing at all, Mother. Just following your advice. Focusing on what I do best." The confusion in her eyes was worth every moment of pain. She'd orchestrated my humiliation, but she hadn't anticipated my resilience. As I watched James and Sarah dance to a song that had once been ours, I felt the first stirring of something beyond hurt. It felt like hope. The week following Amy's wedding passed in a whirlwind of secret planning and careful preparation. Patricia Hawthorne was as good as her word, setting up a Monday meeting that would change everything. I sat in her corner office at Hawthorne Communications, overlooking the Bay Bridge, as she outlined my future with surgical precision. The San Francisco branch needs someone who understands both traditional marketing and digital innovation. she explained, sliding a folder across her massive mahogany desk. Your Morrison campaign showed me you have both skills. More importantly, you have hunger. I can work with hunger. The offer was beyond generous. Double my current salary, full relocation assistance, and the title of Director of Strategic Initiatives. At 26, I'd be one of the youngest directors in the company's history. The catch, if you could call it that, was a start date in 3 weeks. I know it's fast, Patricia acknowledged, but opportunities don't wait for convenient timing. Neither do we. It's perfect, I assured her. I have nothing keeping me here. She studied me with those penetrating eyes. We all have something. The question is whether we let it anchor us or propel us forward. I signed the papers that afternoon, my hand steady despite the magnitude of what I was doing. Patricia's assistant would handle the logistics, finding me an apartment, coordinating the move, even recommending neighborhoods. All I had to do was extract myself from my current life without alerting my family to my plans. The subterfuge felt strange after years of transparency, but my mother had taught me well. Sometimes strategic deception was necessary. I gave notice at Preston and Associates, quietly asking my supervisor to keep it confidential until my last day. I began sorting through my apartment, deciding what deserved a new life in San Francisco and what should stay buried in the past. It was during this sorting that I found my mother's journal. She'd left it at my apartment months ago after one of her visits, tucked between cookbooks on my kitchen shelf. I'd meant to return it, but forgotten in the chaos of daily life. Now flipping through it absently while packing certain entries made my blood freeze. The journal went back 2 years, innocent enough at first. Grocery lists, appointment reminders, garden planning. But around 6 months ago, the entries changed. My mother's neat handwriting spelled out a calculated campaign that took my breath away. May 15th, spoke with James about S's struggles. Planted seed about her needing guidance. He's so helpful, eager to please. Perfect. May 22nd, arranged for S to accidentally run into J at Whole Foods. She wore the sundress that shows her figure. He noticed. June 3rd, M working late again. Suggested to J that someone should check on S at her apartment. Men love feeling needed. June 18th, S and J meeting for coffee now. M oblivious, too focused on promotion. Her ambition will be her downfall. July 2nd, told book club ladies about M's career obsession. Patricia Winters says her daughter would never put work before family. Seeds planted. July 20th, Jay confided he wants children soon. Emphasized M's comments about waiting until 35. Mentioned S loves kids. August 10th, the plan is working perfectly. S reports growing closeness with JM, suspects nothing. Sometimes a mother must save her children from themselves. The entries continued, each one a dagger to my heart. My mother hadn't just encouraged Sarah and James's relationship, she'd engineered it with military precision. Every conversation, every chance meeting, every seed of doubt had been deliberately planted. There were notes about my father, too, strategies for keeping him compliant and unaware. R easier to manage when busy with projects. New table saw should buy months of distraction. I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, reading years of manipulation laid out in purple ink. This wasn't misguided maternal concern. This was deliberate, calculated destruction of my relationship, and she documented it all, confident in her own righteousness. The decision to confront her one final time wasn't strategic. It was necessary. I needed her to know that I needed to look her in the eye with full knowledge of her betrayal. So Friday afternoon, journal in hand, I drove to my childhood home for what would be our last conversation. I found her in the living room, needle-pointing a sampler with home sweet home imagery that felt like mockery. She looked up when I entered, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness as she noticed what I carried. My journal. I wondered where that had gotten to. Fascinating reading, I said, sitting across from her, particularly the entries from the last 6 months. She set down her needlework with deliberate calm. Privacy used to mean something in this family. So did honesty, loyalty, love. Everything I did was from love. No, I said firmly. Everything you did was from control. There's a difference. I opened the journal, reading aloud her most damning entries. With each word, her composure cracked slightly. Not from shame, I realized, but from anger at being exposed. You had no right, she said when I finished, to read your journal or to expect my mother not to sabotage my relationship, to question my judgment. I'm your mother. I know what's best for you. You know what you think is best, what fits your vision of who we should be. But Sarah isn't your fragile flower, and I'm not your cautionary tale about women who dare to have ambitions. Your ambition will leave you alone, she snapped, dropping all pretense of calm. Do you think success keeps you warm at night? Do you think your awards will give you children? Do you think a husband you manipulated into your arms will give Sarah happiness? She's happy now. James is happy. Everyone's happy except you because you can't accept that I was right. About what? That I'm too independent? Too successful? Too much. Yes. The word exploded from her like a bullet. You've always been too much, Marilyn. Too smart, too driven, too stubborn. Men don't want women who make them feel small. I tried to soften you, teach you to be more like Sarah, but you refused to learn. Because I'm not Sarah. I'm me. And look where that's gotten you. 26 and alone, about to throw away your last chance at a normal life for some job across the country. I hadn't told her about San Francisco, but I wasn't surprised she knew. Patricia's assistant had probably called my current employer for references. In a city this size, news traveled fast. It's not just some job, it's my future. It's your excuse to run away. From what the humiliation you orchestrated, the family that betrayed me, the man who chose my sister, because you convinced him I wasn't enough. I didn't have to convince him of anything. He saw the truth. Sarah will make him happy in ways you never could. Because she'll make herself small for him. Because she'll give up her dreams to support his. Because she understands that love requires sacrifice. And I don't. You sacrifice for your career, not for people. When have you ever put someone else first? The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I had prioritized work, had missed dinners, and postponed vacations. But not from lack of love, from a desire to build something to matter, to create a life worth living. You're right, I said quietly. I do put my career first sometimes. Because unlike you, I don't believe a woman's worth comes from the man she marries or the children she raises. I believe we can define ourselves. Feminist nonsense. You'll die alone with that attitude. Maybe. Or maybe I'll find someone who loves me because of my ambition, not despite it. Someone who sees my independence as strength, not a character flaw. Men like that don't exist. Then I'll be happily single. Better that than miserably married to someone who settled for me because my mother convinced him my sister was a better option. She laughed bitterly. You think James settled for Sarah. Have you seen them together? He lights up around her in ways he never did with you. Because she doesn't challenge him, doesn't threaten him, doesn't make him think or grow or question. She's comfortable mother, safe. Is that really what you want for either of them? I want them to be happy. You want them to be conventional. There's a difference. We stared at each other across the chasm of years and fundamental disagreements. I saw my mother clearly for perhaps the first time, not as an all-powerful matriarch, but as a woman trapped by her own limitations, projecting her fears onto her daughters. She'd given up her own dreams for marriage and motherhood and couldn't conceive of any other path leading to fulfillment. When do you leave? She asked finally. 2 weeks. I suppose you'll want some grand goodbye, some dramatic scene where we all beg for your forgiveness. No, I want nothing from any of you. Then why are you here? I stood placing her journal on the coffee table between us. To return this, and to tell you that despite everything I forgive you, I don't want your forgiveness. I don't need it. It's not for you. It's for me. I refuse to carry bitterness to San Francisco. You, Sarah James, you can have each other. You can live in the small, safe world you've created, but I'm done being a character in your story. You're being melodramatic. I'm being free. I turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. One last thing. Dad knows. He's known all along. The question is what happens when he finally gets tired of being managed too. The shock on her face was worth everything. I left her there, surrounded by her needlepoint and her schemes, and walked out of my childhood home for what I knew would be the last time. In the driveway, I found my father loading lumber into his truck. He looked up as I approached, and I saw understanding in his weathered face. "You're leaving," he said. "It wasn't a question." "California, new job, new life." He nodded slowly. "It's for the best. You don't belong here anymore. Maybe you never did." "Dad, I should have protected you better. From her, from all of it. I was a coward." "You were surviving, I understand." He pulled me into a fierce hug, and I breathed in sawdust and regret. "Be happy, sweetheart. Be everything she was too afraid to let you become. Will you be okay?" He released me, attempting a smile. "I have my workshop, and maybe it's time I stopped letting her manage everything else. If you ever need me. I know where California is. Now go before she comes out here and tries to talk you into staying." I drove away with tears streaming down my face, but they weren't entirely sad. There was relief mixed with the grief freedom woven through the loss. My family had chosen their paths, and I had chosen mine. The bridge was burned, but sometimes fire was necessary for new growth. 2 weeks later, Lisa drove me to the airport at dawn, my life condensed into suitcases and shipped boxes. She hugged me fiercely at the departure gate. "Give them hell in San Francisco," she said. "And when you're running the world, remember us little people. When I'm running the world," I promised, "you'll be right there with me." The plane lifted off as the sun rose over the city I'd called home for 26 years. Below, my mother was probably making breakfast. My father was likely in his workshop. Sarah and James were starting their conventional life together. But I was ascending, leaving their small world behind for something vast and unknown and entirely mine. I opened my laptop and began working on my first presentation for Hawthorne Communications. The past was prologue. The real story was just beginning. The 2 weeks between confronting my mother and leaving for San Francisco passed in a blur of calculated efficiency. I became a ghost in my own life, present but untouchable, finishing projects at work, while my colleagues remained unaware of my impending departure. My supervisor kept her word about maintaining confidentiality, though I caught her looking at me sometimes with a mixture of pride and regret. "You're going to do amazing things," she told me during our final one-on-one meeting. "Hawthorne is lucky to have you. We're just sorry to lose you." I'd managed to avoid my family entirely since that last confrontation screening calls and declining text invitations to Sunday dinners with increasingly creative excuses. Food poisoning, work emergencies, a fictional conference that required weekend preparation. Each lie came easier than the last, a skill I'd apparently inherited from my mother despite my best efforts. But the universe seemed determined to test my resolve. 3 days before my scheduled departure, Sarah showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, standing in my hallway with tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but the sound of my moving boxes being sealed had already given me away. "Marilyn, please," she called through the door. "I know you're in there. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She took in my appearance: old jeans, paint-stained t-shirt hair, and a messy bun, and her face crumpled further. "You're really leaving," she said. "How did you find out?" "Dad told me. Well, not directly. I overheard him on the phone with someone about shipping your car to California." Of course. Even my attempts at secrecy were thwarted by my father's practical nature. He'd offered to help arrange vehicle transport, one of the few kindnesses I'd accepted. "What do you want Sarah to explain, to apologize, to fix this?" "There's nothing to fix. You wanted James, you got him. Everyone's happy." "I'm not happy." The words burst from her like water through a dam. None of this is what I thought it would be. Mom made it sound so perfect, like we were meant to be together, but it's all wrong. He calls me by your name sometimes. Did you know that? When he's distracted or tired, he forgets I'm not you. I felt a bitter satisfaction that I immediately suppressed. That's not my problem anymore. Can I please come in just for a few minutes? Every instinct screamed no, but something in her desperation reminded me of the little sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I stepped aside, letting her enter what remained of my apartment. Boxes lined the walls, furniture already sold or donated my life stripped down to essentials. Sarah wandered through the space like a lost child, touching things, as if to confirm they were real. I remember when you first moved in here. I was so jealous. You had your own place, your own life, everything I wanted. So you took mine. She flinched. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Mom said you didn't really love him, that you were too focused on work to appreciate what you had. She made it sound like I was doing everyone a favor. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her. Do you know what it's like being the pretty one? The less intelligent one, the one everyone assumes will amount to nothing more than a trophy wife. So you decided to become exactly that? I thought if I had James, I'd finally have something you didn't, something that was mine. She collapsed onto my sole remaining chair, looking smaller than her 24 years. But he's not mine. He's yours. Even when he's with me, he's looking for you. What exactly do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That it's okay, that we can all be friends? I want you to tell me how to fix this. You can't. Some things can't be undone. I could give him back. The absurdity of her phrasing, as if James were a borrowed sweater or misplaced book, almost made me laugh. He's not yours to give, Sarah. He made his choice. Mom made his choice. Did you know she threatened his father's business? Said she'd use her connections at the bank to call in their loans early if James didn't break up with you. I thought of James's confession that night at my apartment, how he'd mentioned his father's business, but I'd been too hurt to process the implications. Another piece of my mother's web revealed itself more sinister than I'd imagined. Even if that's true, he still chose his family business over our relationship. That tells me everything I need to know about his priorities. You would have done the same for your career. No, I said firmly. I would have found another way, fought back, refused to be manipulated. That's the difference between us, Sarah. When life gets hard, I get creative. You and James. You take the path of least resistance. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, mascara smearing across her cheekbones. So you're really going to leave, just abandon everything and everyone? I'm not abandoning anything. I'm choosing something better. In San Francisco, what's there that you can't have here? Freedom. Opportunity. A life where my success isn't seen as a character flaw. I paused, then added more gently, Sarah, you're 24. You don't have to live Mom's life. You don't have to be what she expects. Easy for you to say. You've always been the strong one. Strength isn't inherited, it's chosen. Every day in small decisions and large ones. You can choose it too. She stood abruptly, anger flashing across her features. Not everyone can be you, Marilyn. Not everyone wants to be alone and successful and superior. I'd rather be alone than with someone who chose me because my mother threatened him into it. He does love me, she said, but it sounded more like a question than a statement. Then why are you here? She had no answer for that, just stood among my boxes, looking beautiful and lost. I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. Sarah had been as much a pawn in our mother's games as anyone raised to believe her only value lay in her appearance and ability to attract a successful man. The manipulation ran deeper than just the last few months. It was a lifetime of conditioning. I need to finish packing, I said finally. You should go. Will you ever come back? Not for a long time. What should I tell people when they ask about you? Tell them the truth, that I got an incredible job opportunity and took it, that I'm building the life I want, that I'm happy. Are you happy? I considered the question honestly. Not yet, but I will be. Sarah left without another word, and I returned to my packing with renewed determination. But the universe wasn't done testing me. The next visitor arrived that evening, James. I recognized his knock. 3 short raps paused 2 more. The pattern he'd used throughout our relationship, a silly, intimate code that now felt like mockery. I opened the door to find him looking haggard, dressed in work clothes, covered in construction dust. "Can we talk?" he asked. "We have nothing to talk about." "Please, Marilyn. I know I don't deserve it, but give me 5 minutes. Then I'll leave you alone forever." Maybe it was the defeat in his voice or my own need for closure, but I let him in. He stood awkwardly in my emptied apartment, hands shoved in his pockets like a chastised schoolboy. "Sarah came by earlier," I said. "You two comparing notes." "She doesn't know I'm here. No one does." "How did you find out I was leaving?" "Your landlord's daughter goes to my gym. She mentioned someone was taking over your lease early." He looked around at the boxes. "San Francisco." "Yes." "Good, that's good. You'll do great there." "Is that what you came to say, to wish me well?" "No, I came to tell you the truth, all of it." He took a deep breath. "Your mother didn't just threaten my father's business. She had leverage. Dad's been skimming from city contracts for years, nothing major but enough to ruin him if exposed. Eleanor found out somehow, probably through her banking connections. She gave me a choice breakup with you and date Sarah, or watch my family's reputation destroyed. So you chose your criminal father over our relationship. I chose protecting my mother from the shame. She has heart problems. The stress could have killed her." "How noble, and falling for my sister. Was that part of protecting your mother, too?" He flinched. "I haven't fallen for Sarah. I've tried. God knows I've tried. She's sweet and beautiful and wants all the same things I do, but she's not you." "No, she's not. She's someone who would never challenge you, never outshine you, never make you question whether you're living up to your potential. She's safe." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Tell me, James, when you're with her, do you talk about anything substantial? Do you debate ideas, dream beyond the conventional, or do you just coast along, comfortable in the life my mother designed for you?" His silence was answer enough. "I did love you," he said finally. "I still do, but you're right. I took the easy way out. I let fear make my choices. And now you have to live with them. What if I didn't? What if I left, Sarah stood up to your mother, faced whatever consequences came? Then you'd be doing it 3 months too late. I don't want you anymore, James. The man I loved would have fought for us from the beginning. You're just someone who looks like him." The brutal honesty of my words hung between us like a blade. He absorbed them without protest, knowing they were deserved. "For what it's worth," he said as he turned to leave, "I'll regret this for the rest of my life." "For what it's worth," I replied, "so will I. But I'll build something better from the regret. You'll just marinate in it." After he left, I sat among my boxes and allowed myself one last crying session. Not for the relationship we'd lost, that had been mourned already, but for the future we'd never have. The children who would never exist, the home we'd never build, the life we'd planned in careful detail. I grieved it all, then packed those feelings away with everything else I was leaving behind. The next morning brought another unexpected encounter, this time at the bank, where I was closing my local accounts. Eleanor stood at the teller window next to mine, every inch, the respectable suburban matron in her pressed pantsuit and pearls. We noticed each other simultaneously, and I saw her spine stiffen with determination. "Marilyn," she said coolly, "running your final errands, I suppose." "Something like that." "Patricia Hawthorne called me yesterday." She continued as if we were having a normal conversation. "Wanted a personal reference for you. Such an odd request considering you've already accepted the position." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you're brilliant, ambitious, and completely incapable of maintaining personal relationships because of your need to be superior." I laughed, actually laughed, right there in the bank. Several customers turned to stare, but I didn't care. The absurdity of my mother trying to sabotage me even now, even after she'd gotten everything she wanted, was somehow hilarious. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" I asked when I caught my breath. "I'm leaving, giving you exactly what you wanted. Sarah and James together, no competition, no challenges to your worldview. And you still need to try to hurt me." "I don't want to hurt you. I want you to understand the consequences of your choices. No, you want me to fail, because if I succeed, when I succeed, it proves you wrong. It proves a woman can have a thriving career and still be happy, that we don't need to choose between ambition and fulfillment." "You're 26 years old. You know nothing about fulfillment. And you're 55 and terrified that you wasted your life." She slapped me right there in the bank in front of a dozen witnesses, my mother's hand connected with my cheek in a crack that echoed off the marble walls. The teller gasped. The security guard started forward. I raised my hand to stop him, my cheek stinging, but my spine straight. "Feel better?" I asked calmly. How dare I, what speak the truth, point out that you gave up your dreams for a marriage to a man who barely notices you're alive, that you've spent 30 years trying to live through your daughters because you're too scared to live for yourself. I have a beautiful home, a stable marriage, 2 daughters. 1 daughter. You lost the other one the moment you decided I was too much. And Sarah, give her 5 years of the life you've planned for her. See if she thanks you then." I completed my transaction with the stunned teller, took my receipt, and walked out of the bank with my mother's handprint still burning on my face. I didn't look back to see if she was watching. It didn't matter anymore. That evening, Patricia Hawthorne called personally. "Interesting reference from your mother," she said without preamble. "She seems to think you're difficult to work with." "I can explain." "No need. Anyone who can inspire that level of vitriol from their own mother while maintaining the professional reputation you have, that's someone I want on my team. See you Monday, Marilyn. We're going to do great things together." As my plane lifted off from the runway 3 days later, I thought about breaking points, how we all have them, how they define us not in the breaking, but in what we do after. My family had broken me, but I was rebuilding myself stronger, sharper, more authentically myself than ever before. Below me, the city faded into morning mist. Ahead, the California sun beckoned with promise. I'd been broken, but I was far from beaten. The real transformation was just beginning. My first week in San Francisco felt like stepping through a portal into an alternate universe. Patricia had assigned her assistant Marcus to help me settle in, and he approached the task with military precision. The apartment he'd found for me in Pacific Heights was a Victorian conversion with soaring ceilings, original hardwood floors, and a view of the bay that made my chest tight with possibility. "Patricia thought you'd appreciate something with character," Marcus explained as he handed over the keys. "The building has history. Survived the 1906 earthquake, housed beat poets in the 50s, tech entrepreneurs now. Seems fitting." Everything about the city felt fitting. The morning fog that rolled in like a blanket, the steep hills that turned every walk into an adventure, the eclectic mix of people who seemed to have all come here to reinvent themselves. I was just another transplant seeking transformation, anonymous in the best possible way. My new office occupied the top floor of a restored warehouse in Soma, with exposed brick walls and windows that framed the Bay Bridge like art. Patricia introduced me to the team on Monday morning. 12 brilliant minds who'd been handpicked to launch Hawthorne Communications into the West Coast market. Everyone meet Marilyn Patterson, our new Director of Strategic Initiatives. She's the one who created that Morrison Industries campaign you all couldn't stop talking about. Expect great things. No mention of my age, no qualifiers about being promising or up and coming. Just expectation of greatness stated as fact. I stood a little taller, spoke a little clearer, felt the mantle of possibilities settling on my shoulders like armor. The work was demanding from day one. Patricia didn't believe in easing people in. She threw me into the deep end with 3 major accounts and a mandate to land 2 more by month's end. My days stretched from 7 in the morning until 9 at night, fueled by artisanal coffee and the intoxicating energy of building something new. "You're trying to prove something," Patricia observed on my third week, finding me still at my desk at 10 p.m. "The question is, to whom?" "Maybe to myself," I admitted. "Good. That's the only person worth proving anything to. But pace yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I need you brilliant for years, not burned out in months." I took her advice, finding balance in exploration. Weekends became my sanctuary, devoted to discovering my new city. I walked every neighborhood from the tourist-packed Fisherman's Wharf to the authentic Mission District. I ate dim sum in Chinatown, browsed books in city lights, hiked Land's End until my legs shook. Each adventure was documented in photos. I didn't share experiences. I didn't post memories that belonged only to me. Lisa visited after my first month, her eyes wide as I showed her my new life. We brunched in the Castro, shopped in Union Square, watched the sunset from Twin Peaks. She stayed in my guest room, a luxury I'd never had before, and we talked until dawn like college girls. "You're different," she said on her last morning, studying me over coffee. "Not just happier, more yourself." I think I'm finally who I was supposed to be before everyone else decided who I should be. "Any regrets?" "Every day. But regret and relief aren't mutually exclusive. I mourn what I lost while celebrating what I've found." She hugged me fiercely at the airport. "Your family has no idea what they gave up." Work success came faster than I'd anticipated. The launch campaign for a sustainable fashion startup went viral, generating millions in earned media. A tech company's rebrand doubled their valuation. My strategies were unconventional, blending emotional storytelling with data-driven targeting in ways that made competitors scramble to catch up. "You think differently," Patricia told me during my quarterly review. "You see angles others miss. That's worth more than experience." The raise she offered made my head spin, but more valuable was her mentorship. She taught me to navigate corporate politics with surgical precision, to command rooms dominated by men twice my age, to own my intelligence without apology. Under her guidance, I transformed from talented junior marketer to formidable strategic force. My personal life evolved more slowly. I made friends among my colleagues, joined a running club that conquered San Francisco's brutal hills, found a favorite coffee shop where the barista knew my order. But romantic relationships remained off-limits, a door I deadbolted after James. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too complete. "You can't swear off love forever," Lisa warned during one of our video calls. "I'm not. I'm just focusing on loving myself first." The holidays approached with complicated feelings. Thanksgiving passed quietly. Patricia invited me to her family gathering where I discovered her husband was a renowned chef and her teenage daughters refreshingly ambitious. Christmas loomed larger, weighted with tradition and expectation. I'd maintained complete radio silence with my family since leaving. No calls, no texts, no social media connections. The only updates I received came through Lisa, who heard things through mutual acquaintances. Sarah and James were still together planning a spring wedding. My mother continued her society lunches and charitable committees. My father had apparently taken up photography, spending long hours away from home. On Christmas Eve, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address, but I recognized my father's careful handwriting. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a wooden picture frame he'd clearly made himself. The wood was beautiful, stained dark and polished to a shine. Inside the frame was a photo I'd never seen. Me at age 5 or 6, covered in sawdust, beaming as I helped him in his workshop. The note was brief. "Building new things is in your blood. Proud of you, Dad." I cried then, alone, in my beautiful apartment 3,000 miles from home. Not from sadness, but from a complex mixture of loss and gratitude. He understood. In his quiet way, he'd always understood. I displayed the frame prominently on my bookshelf, a reminder that not all bridges had to burn completely. Some could simply be crossed once and left standing for others to use. New Year's Eve found me at a rooftop party thrown by a client, champagne in hand, and the city glittering below. Fireworks exploded over the bay at midnight, and I made no resolutions. I was already becoming who I needed to be. January blurred into February, success building on success. My team landed the biggest account in Hawthorne's history, a multinational corporation seeking complete brand transformation. The presentation I'd developed weaving their legacy with future innovation had their board members visibly emotional. The contract value made me California's youngest account director to manage a portfolio of that size. "You're ready for more," Patricia announced after the signing. "I'm promoting you to Vice President of Strategic Development. You'll build your own team, run your own division. Think you can handle it?" "I know I can." "That's why I'm giving it to you. Confidence backed by competence is unstoppable." The promotion came with a salary that would have made my mother faint and responsibilities that energized rather than overwhelmed me. I hired carefully, building a team of brilliant misfits who thought differently, pushed boundaries, refused to accept, because we've always done it that way, as reasoning. My life settled into rhythm. Morning runs through Golden Gate Park power breakfasts with clients, days spent crafting campaigns that changed how companies told their stories, evenings at industry events, or exploring new restaurants. Weekends brought hikes and Marin wine tasting and Napa lazy Sundays at the farmer's market. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just pleasant dinners with interesting people who didn't make my heart race or my trust waver. "You're becoming quite the San Francisco success story," Patricia noted one evening as we shared drinks after a particularly successful pitch. "How does it feel like I'm finally living my life instead of the one scripted for me?" "Good. Hold on to that feeling. Success can be its own trap if you let others define it for you." Spring arrived with explosion of color. Cherry blossoms in Japantown, wildflowers in the Marin headlands, possibility blooming everywhere. I'd been gone 6 months, long enough for the acute pain to fade to a dull ache, long enough to know I'd made the right choice. Then one Tuesday morning, my personal cell rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Marilyn, it's Amy, your cousin." My stomach dropped. Family only called with emergencies. "What's wrong?" "It's your dad. He had a heart attack. He's stable, but I thought you should know." The world tilted. "When? How bad?" "Last night, he's at Regional Medical. Your mom's there, Sarah, too. He's been asking for you." I was already pulling up flight information on my laptop. "I'll be there tonight." "Marilyn, there's something else. The reason he had the attack. Your parents are getting divorced. Your mom doesn't know I'm calling you." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone. My father, who'd never raised his voice or made waves, who'd hidden in his workshop while my mother orchestrated our lives, had finally broken free, and it had nearly killed him. I booked the next flight out, told Patricia I had a family emergency, and threw essentials into a bag. 6 months after my dramatic exit, I was returning to face whatever remained of my family. But this time, I wasn't the same person who'd left. I was stronger, more certain, less willing to accept manipulation as love. As my plane lifted off, reversing the journey I'd taken to freedom, I thought about my father's photography, his new hobby that took him away from home. Maybe we'd both been building new lives in our own ways. Maybe breaking free was the Patterson family legacy my mother never intended to pass down. The antiseptic smell of Regional Medical brought back memories I'd rather forget. Childhood broken arms, Sarah's appendectomy, my grandmother's final days. But walking through those sliding doors as a successful woman rather than a dutiful daughter changed everything. My Armani blazer and designer heels clicked authority with each step. The transformation wasn't just internal anymore. I found my father in the cardiac unit looking smaller than I remembered against the white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily, reassuringly. His eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when I approached, focusing slowly before filling with tears. "Marilyn, you came." "Of course I came." I took his hand, careful of the IV line. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but the doctors say I'll recover. Mild attack, they called it. Warning shot. Amy said about the divorce. He squeezed my hand weakly. 40 years is enough. After you left, I started seeing things differently. Started seeing everything differently. Dad, she's been having an affair. The words came out flat matter of fact. 3 years. With Richard Pemberton from the country club. Everyone knew but me. Or maybe I knew but didn't want to see. Richard Pemberton. My mother's tennis partner, committee, co-chair, constant companion at social functions. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. While she'd been orchestrating my life, judging my choices, preaching about proper behavior, she'd been living her own lie. I hired an investigator, Dad continued. After you confronted her about the journal, I needed to know what else she was hiding. Turns out quite a lot. Is that what triggered the heart attack, finding out? No. The heart attack came when she tried to empty our joint accounts. Apparently she's been moving money for months preparing. When I confronted her, she said I'd never have the courage to actually leave. The stress of proving her wrong literally broke my heart. A nurse entered to check his vitals, giving me time to process. My mother, the moral arbiter of our family, the woman who destroyed my relationship because it didn't fit her standards, had been betraying her marriage vows for years. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Where is she now? I asked when the nurse left. Who knows Sarah's been here? She's not handling any of this well. The wedding's off, by the way. James broke it off last week. What? Apparently, he couldn't go through with it. Said marrying Sarah when he was in love with you would be cruel to everyone. Your mother's been in damage control mode, but between that and the divorce papers I served, her perfect world is crumbling. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was tired. The machinations and manipulations had claimed so many victims. How's Sarah? Devastated, humiliated, lost. She could use her big sister, but I understand if... She's in the cafeteria, a voice said from the doorway. Sarah stood there looking haggard in wrinkled clothes, her usually perfect appearance abandoned. Hi, Marilyn. Hi. We stared at each other across months of hurt and betrayal. She looked different. Older, worn down the golden girl tarnish, finally showing through. I probably looked different too. Sharper, more confident, wearing success like designer armor. I'll give you two some privacy, I told my father. Rest. I'll be back. Sarah and I walked to the cafeteria in silence, muscle memory, navigating halls we'd traveled during other family crises. She bought coffee with shaking hands while I found a corner table away from other visitors. When she sat across from me, I noticed her engagement ring was gone. So, I said, James ended it. Last Tuesday said he couldn't pretend anymore, that every time he kissed me, he wished it was you. Every romantic gesture felt like betrayal. He actually used the word betrayal. She laughed bitterly, as if I hadn't been betrayed too. Were you complicit? Both maybe. I wanted to believe Mom, wanted to believe I deserved something wonderful, that for once I could have what you had. What I had was earned Sarah, built over time. You can't steal a relationship like shoplifting a dress. I know that now. God, do I know that. She wiped at her eyes. Do you know what the worst part is? I actually started to love him. Not the idea of him, not what he represented, but him. And every day I could see him trying so hard to love me back. The effort was visible, Marilyn. Do you know how that feels? No, and I'm grateful for that. He talked about you constantly, little things, how you'd react to a movie, what you'd say about current events, foods you loved. He didn't even realize he was doing it. I became an expert on you through his memories. That must have been painful. It was educational. I learned who you really are versus who Mom painted you as. Turns out you're actually pretty amazing. Ambitious, yes, but also kind. Driven, but thoughtful. Nothing like the selfish careerist Mom described. Mom sees what she wants to see. Mom's a hypocrite. The venom in Sarah's voice surprised me. 3 years, Marilyn. She's been sleeping with Richard Pemberton for 3 years while lecturing us about propriety and proper behavior, while destroying your relationship because it didn't meet her standards. Dad told me. The whole town knows. She was so careful about controlling our narratives, she forgot to control her own. The gossip is everywhere. Irving family matriarch revealed as common adulteress. The committees are already distancing themselves. How do you feel about it? Sarah considered this. Liberated, furious, terrified. Without Mom's scripts, I don't know who I'm supposed to be. Maybe that's the point, to figure out who you are without someone else is supposed to. Easy for you, you always knew. No, I always fought to find out. There's a difference. We sat in silence, sipping terrible hospital coffee. Around us, other families dealt with their own crises, their own revelations. The universal hospital experience, life stripped down to essential truths. I'm applying to graduate school, Sarah said suddenly. Psychology. I want to understand how we got so twisted up, how manipulation becomes love in families like ours. That's wonderful. You sound surprised. I am, pleasantly so. Well, I'm full of surprises lately. Also, I'm moving to Portland. Fresh start where nobody knows me as Eleanor Patterson's daughter or the girl who stole her sister's boyfriend. You didn't steal him. He was given. There's a difference. A semantic one. An important one. You were used just like the rest of us. The only difference is you got a starring role while I got written out. Sarah reached across the table, hesitating before touching my hand. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know. I'm sorry for betraying you, for believing Mom, for wanting what you had instead of building my own life. I believe you. Can you forgive me? I thought about it honestly. Someday, not today, but someday. Healing takes time. I'll take someday. We returned to Dad's room to find him awake, an alert color returning to his cheeks. He looked between us, noting our clasped hands, and smiled. My girls, together again. Don't get sappy on us, I warned, but squeezed his hand anyway. The next days blurred together. I extended my stay working remotely from my hotel while spending days at the hospital. Dad improved steadily, his prognosis excellent if he avoided stress and followed medical advice. The divorce proceedings would be stressful, but he seemed energized by finally taking action. I've wasted so many years, he told me one afternoon, hiding in that workshop while your mother ran everything. I was a coward. You were surviving. Surviving isn't living. You taught me that. Watching you leave build something new. It inspired me. If my 26-year-old daughter could start over, what was my excuse? So what's next after you recover? Photography full-time, maybe. I've been taking classes, you know. The instructor says I have a good eye. There's a gallery interested in my industrial series. Dad, that's amazing. It's terrifying, but good terrifying. The kind that means you're alive. My mother never appeared at the hospital. According to Sarah, she'd retreated to her sister's house in Monterey, crafting a narrative where she was the victim of an ungrateful family. The divorce would be messy. California community property laws meant splitting everything, including her precious social standing. On my last night, I met Sarah for dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. She looked better having showered and changed, though the shadows under her eyes remained. I wanted to ask you something, she said over salads. Would you be willing to write me a recommendation letter for graduate school? Sarah, I'm not sure. Not as my sister, as vice president of strategic development at Hawthorne Communications. I worked that internship at your old company 2 summers ago. Remember, you supervised my project. I'd forgotten about that brief professional overlap before everything went wrong. She'd shown promise then. Creative thinking, strong writing, natural insight into human behavior. Skills that would serve her well in psychology. Send me your application materials. If they're strong, I'll write the letter. Thank you for considering it, I mean. I know I don't deserve... Stop. This victim narrative doesn't suit you any more than the Golden Girl one did. You want to study psychology. Start with yourself. Figure out who you are without the roles others assigned you. You sound like a therapist already. I sound like someone who's done the work. Your turn now. We parted with a hug, awkward but genuine. I flew back to San Francisco the next morning, returning to my life with new perspective. The family I'd left behind was transforming in my absence, each member finding their own path to freedom. Maybe that was my true legacy. Not the leaving, but the inspiration to leave behind what no longer served. Back in my office, Patricia noticed the change immediately. You seemed different, settled. Closure will do that. Good, because I have a proposal that requires your full attention. How do you feel about Tokyo? The city. The opportunity. Hawthorne's expanding to Asia. I need someone to lead the charge. 6 months to establish the office, hire the team, land the accounts. Interested? 6 months ago, I would have hesitated, worried about leaving the life I'd just built. But now, strengthened by survival and success, I didn't even pause. When do I leave? That's my girl. We'll discuss details tomorrow. For now, welcome back. Your real life is waiting. That night, I called my father to share the news. His joy for me rang clear across the miles. Sarah texted congratulations, adding that she'd submitted her graduate applications. Even Lisa, when I told her, squealed with excitement about having a friend in Tokyo to visit. As I stood at my apartment window watching fog roll over the bay, I thought about rising from ashes. The phoenix metaphor felt too simple for the complex rebirth I'd experienced. I hadn't burst into flames and emerged whole. I'd broken apart, slowly rebuilt myself piece by piece, stronger at the mended places. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new versions of myself to discover. But tonight I was exactly where and who I needed to be. Tokyo overwhelmed and exhilarated in equal measure. After 2 months of intensive language lessons and cultural training, I arrived in April just as cherry blossoms painted the city an impossible pink. Patricia had arranged for a serviced apartment in Roppongi Hills, a gleaming tower that put my San Francisco view to shame. From 40 floors up, Tokyo spread out like a circuit board, precise and pulsing with energy. Establishing Hawthorne Communications Asia proved more challenging than any campaign I'd run. Japanese business culture operated on unwritten rules that my training had only scratched the surface of. My first meeting with potential clients ended in polite disaster when I'd pitched too aggressively too American. My translator, Yuki, gently explained afterward that I'd need to build relationships first, business second. In Japan, trust comes before contracts, she said over yakitori and beer in a tiny Shibuya izakaya. Your credentials matter less than your character. So I learned to read silences and bow properly to present business cards with both hands and study ones received as if they contained secrets. I hired, slowly building a team of bicultural professionals who could navigate both worlds. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Each small victory, a meeting that ended with genuine smiles, a client who requested a follow-up understanding, a full conversation in Japanese, felt monumental. 3 months in, I attended a technology conference at the Tokyo International Forum. My Japanese had improved enough to follow presentations without constant translation, though networking still required Yuki's help. I was mentally exhausted by the afternoon break, escaping to a quiet garden area with canned coffee from a vending machine. "The Boss coffee is terrible," a voice said in accented English, but somehow addictive. I turned to find a man in an expensive suit holding an identical can, his smile suggesting he'd made this joke before. He was handsome in an understated way. Half Asian features, probably mixed heritage with laugh lines that suggested genuine warmth. "First rule of Tokyo survival," I replied. "Embrace the vending machine coffee?" "Ah, you're learning. American..." "Guilty, you..." "Complicated. Japanese mother, British father, raised everywhere. Alexander Fitzgerald." He offered his business card with perfect Japanese etiquette despite his Western name. "Marilyn Patterson." I reciprocated, noting his title, CEO Northbridge Ventures. "Venture capital." "Guilty as you say. though we prefer strategic investment. Sounds less predatory. Does it work? Not really. We're still sharks, just well-dressed ones. His grin took the edge off the words. I saw your presentation earlier. Impressive for someone so new to Tokyo. You were there. Back row. I invest in emerging markets and new ventures. Hawthorne establishing here caught my attention. Your approach to bridging cultural gaps in marketing was insightful. Insightful enough to invest. Direct, I like that. Very un-Japanese of you. I'm working on it. Don't work too hard. Tokyo needs people who shake things up. He glanced at his phone. I have to return, but would you be interested in dinner? Not a pitch, just conversation. Being bicultural in Tokyo can be isolating. Always nice to meet someone who understands the balance. I hesitated. Since James, I'd kept relationships strictly professional, but something about Alexander felt different. No games, no pretense, just straightforward interest. Dinner sounds nice. He suggested a restaurant in Daikanyama for the following week. True to his word, it wasn't a pitch. We talked about everything except business. His childhood moving between London, Tokyo, and New York, my sudden relocation and family drama, the challenge of belonging everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. He was intelligent without being condescending, successful without arrogance, attractive without trying. Can I ask something personal? He said over dessert. What are you running from? What makes you think I'm running? Recognition. I did the same thing 8 years ago. Came to Tokyo to escape a life that no longer fit. Best decision I ever made. What were you escaping? Family expectations. My British grandparents wanted me in banking. My Japanese grandparents wanted me married with children. I wanted to build something of my own. He gestured self-deprecatingly. Hence the shark suit. Do you ever regret it? Every day, and never. He smiled. That's the thing about choosing yourself. It's simultaneously the hardest and easiest decision. We began meeting regularly. Dinners that stretch past midnight weekend walks through different neighborhoods, occasional business events where we'd gravitate toward each other. He showed me his Tokyo, hidden jazz bars in Golden Gai, the best ramen at 2 a.m. quiet shrines tucked between skyscrapers. I shared my discoveries. Art galleries and Aoyama hiking trails outside the city, the perfect spot to watch sunset from Tokyo Tower. We're becoming friends. I told Yuki one day, horrified to hear defensiveness in my voice. Friends who light up when they see each other, she observed. Friends who text constantly, friends who smile at their phones. It's not like that. Why can't it be? Because I'd been betrayed. Because love meant vulnerability. Because I'd built myself strong and alone and didn't know how to be strong together. But I didn't say any of that, just shrugged and changed the subject. Alexander never pushed. When I mentioned my ex-boyfriend in passing, he didn't pry. When I flinched at casual touches, he gave space. He seemed to understand that trust-like business in Japan required patience and proof of character. The shift came gradually. A business crisis that had me calling him at midnight knowing he'd answer. A family update about my father's recovery that I shared without thinking. The realization that he'd become the person I wanted to tell things to first. I think I'm falling for you, he said one evening 6 months into our friendship. We were on his apartment balcony, Tokyo, glittering below, sharing wine after a successful joint project. I thought you should know. No pressure, no expectations. Just honesty. Alexander, you don't have to say anything. I know you're not ready. Maybe you'll never be. But I'd rather you know where I stand than wonder. What if I hurt you? What if I can't? Then you hurt me. Life involves risk. I'm a venture capitalist. Remember, I invest in potential, not guarantees. I'm not a startup. No, you're much more interesting. Startups fail 70% of the time. You've already proven you know how to succeed. That night, I told him everything. About James and Sarah, my mother's betrayal, the journal that revealed years of manipulation. He listened without interrupting, without judgment, without trying to fix anything. When I finished, he simply took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that. Doesn't it worry you that I'm damaged, that I might never fully trust anyone again? We're all damaged. The question is whether we let it define us or refine us." He squeezed my hand gently. "Besides, I told you, I invest in potential, and yours is extraordinary." We took things slowly, carefully, like defusing a bomb. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, became breakfast. His apartment gained traces of me. A toothbrush, a drawer, my favorite tea. My place showed signs of him. His reading glasses, a jacket, flowers he'd brought that I couldn't throw away. "You're different," Lisa noticed during a video call. "Softer, happier." Tokyo agrees with me. Tut Tokyo. Or that venture capitalist you casually mention every 3 sentences. I don't... Marilyn, you just spent 10 minutes telling me about his childhood dog. You're smitten. Smitten. Such an old-fashioned word for the modern tangle of emotions Alexander inspired. He made me laugh with terrible puns in 3 languages. He challenged my ideas without dismissing them. He celebrated my victories as enthusiastically as his own. Most surprisingly, he made me feel safe, not protected or coddled, but secure in being myself. "I love you," I told him one morning, 8 months after that first conference. We were making breakfast in his kitchen, dancing around each other with practiced ease. The words slipped out naturally, surprising us both. He stopped mid-reach for coffee mugs, turning to face me. "Say that again." "I love you, despite my best efforts not to, despite being terrified, despite everything." He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like promise and morning coffee. "I love you too. Have for months, years possibly, since you defended vending machine coffee with such passion." We laughed, we kissed, we burned the eggs. It felt nothing like my relationship with James. No desperate need to prove anything, no underlying anxiety about meeting expectations. Alexander knew exactly who I was and wanted me anyway, maybe because of it. "I should warn you," I said as we salvaged breakfast. "My family is complicated. My mother's a manipulative adulteress going through a messy divorce. My sister stole my last boyfriend. My father's recovering from a heart attack. I'm essentially estranged from all of them." And that doesn't bother you." "Why would it? I'm not dating your family, though I'd like to meet your father someday. He sounds like someone who'd appreciate good craftsmanship." "You researched him." "I researched you, thoroughly. It's what I do." He grinned at my expression. "Relax, just public information. Enough to know you come from complicated people who didn't appreciate what they had. Their loss my gain." "That's very pragmatic." "I'm a pragmatic romantic. I believe in love and due diligence equally." Living with dual cultures had prepared us for navigating differences. He was British in his need for tea at precise times, Japanese in his attention to aesthetic details, American in his entrepreneurial drive. I was learning to blend my own contradictions, American directness with Japanese subtlety, professional ambition with personal vulnerability. Our worlds merged professionally too. His venture firm began investing in companies that needed Hawthorne's marketing expertise. My campaigns helped launch his portfolio companies into new markets. We maintained strict boundaries, separate offices, clear contracts, no special treatment. But the synergy was undeniable. Power couple. Patricia said during one of our calls watching us work together on a major launch. "I should have seen this coming." "We're just..." "Marilyn, you're brilliant at many things, but lying isn't one of them. You're glowing. He looks at you like you hung the moon. Enjoy it." "What if?" "No what ifs. You've spent enough time planning for disaster. Try planning for happiness instead." So I did. We traveled. Weekend trips to Kyoto, business expansions, to Singapore vacation, to his family's cottage in the Cotswolds, where his parents welcomed me with understated British warmth. His mother, a renowned photographer, bonded with me over discussions of visual storytelling. His father, a Japanese literature professor, appreciated my attempts at reading Murakami in the original language. "You're nothing like James," I told Alexander after that visit curled against him on the flight back to Tokyo. "Good. I'd hate to be anything like someone who let you go." "His loss your gain." "Exactly, though I prefer to think of it as destiny correcting course." "You don't believe in destiny." "I believe in probability. The probability of us meeting in that garden at that moment, both ready for something real, statistically improbable, therefore significant." "I love your romantic mathematics." "I love you, statistically, probabilistically, and actually." 10 months into our relationship, he found the ring. I'd hidden it in my jewelry box, the engagement ring I'd picked out with James but never received. Keeping it felt masochistic, but throwing it away seemed like admitting defeat. Alexander held it up one evening, expression curious rather than accusatory. "Souvenir." "Reminder," I admitted, "of what happens when you let others write your story." "May I?" He took the ring, examined it with professional interest. "Good quality, terrible design, completely wrong for you." "How do you know?" "Because whoever chose this wanted a traditional wife. Solitaire diamond, simple setting, no personality. You need something with character, complexity, fire." "Speaking from experience." "Speaking hypothetically, for now." He handed it back. "What will you do with it?" "I don't know. Seems wrong to keep it wrong to toss it." "Sell it. Donate the money to something that matters. Transform it from reminder of pain to source of good." "That's very Buddhist of you." "That's very practical of me. Also, when the time comes, and I'm saying when not if, I'd prefer to give you a ring with no ghosts attached." The conversation should have sent me running. Instead, I felt calm. The idea of a future with Alexander didn't terrify me. It thrilled me. We weren't rushing toward anything, just moving forward together at a pace that felt right. I sold the ring the next week, donating the proceeds to a women's entrepreneurship fund. It felt like closing a chapter with grace, rather than bitterness. The past had brought me here to this life, this love, this version of myself I actually liked. "No ghosts," I told Alexander that evening. "Just us." "Just us," he agreed, pulling me close. "That's more than enough." The email arrived on a Tuesday morning that had started like any other. Alexander and I were sharing breakfast in our apartment. We'd moved in together 6 months prior, finding a place in Azabu that blended our styles perfectly. I was reviewing presentations for a new client pitch when Patricia's name appeared in my inbox with a subject line that made my heart stop. "Time to come home." "Everything okay?" Alexander asked, noticing my expression. I read aloud. "Marilyn, 3 years ago, I sent you to Tokyo to prove you could build something from nothing. You've exceeded every expectation. Hawthorne Asia is thriving. Your team is exceptional, and you've become the leader I knew you could be. Now I have a bigger challenge. I'm retiring next year. The board has agreed. You should be my successor. Come home. Build your empire, Patricia." "CEO of Hawthorne Communications," Alexander said slowly. "At 29. It's insane. It's earned. You built an entire division from scratch. Your campaigns have redefined marketing in Asia. You speak 3 languages and understand global markets better than executives twice your age." He took my hand across the table. "The question isn't whether you can do it. It's whether you want to." San Francisco felt like a lifetime ago. Tokyo had become home in ways I'd never expected. But CEO of one of the most prestigious agencies in America, that was the kind of opportunity that defined careers. "What about us?" I asked. "Your work is here. Mine would be there." "My work is global. I can run Northbridge from anywhere. The question is whether you want me there with you." "Of course I do." "Then we make it work. That's what we do, isn't it? Take impossible situations and make them possible." The transition took 6 months. I trained my replacement in Tokyo, a brilliant woman named Keiko, who'd become my protege. Alexander began establishing a San Francisco presence for Northbridge finding office space in the same building as Hawthorne's headquarters. We shipped our life across the Pacific, blending Tokyo memories with California dreams. Returning to San Francisco felt like putting on a perfectly tailored coat that had been altered to fit even better. The city welcomed me back with familiar fog and new construction, the same bones with evolved muscle. I took over Patricia's corner office, the one I'd sat in as a nervous 26-year-old, now claiming it with earned authority. "Welcome home, Madam CEO," Patricia said on her last day, handing over a crystal decanter that had belonged to the agency's founder. "Try not to burn the place down." Any final advice? Trust your instincts. Hire people smarter than you. Fire clients who don't respect your team. And remember, you're not here to be liked. You're here to lead. The first year tested every skill I'd developed. Established executives bristled at taking direction from someone they saw as too young, too female, too unconventional. I weathered their resistance with strategic grace, letting results speak louder than rhetoric. When the old guard pushed back on my digital-first approach, I landed 3 Fortune 500 accounts that specifically wanted fresh thinking. When they questioned my work-life integration policies, productivity soared and recruitment improved. Alexander proved to be an invaluable partner, both personally and professionally. His venture capital network opened doors to tech companies that traditional agencies couldn't reach. His experience with startup culture helped me transform Hawthorne from within, maintaining prestige while embracing innovation. Most importantly, his unwavering belief in my abilities silenced my own doubts during difficult moments. "You're remarkable," he told me one evening after I'd navigated a particularly brutal board meeting. "The way you handled their concerns without compromising your vision, it was masterful." I felt like I was going to throw up the entire time. Leadership isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He handed me champagne. Besides, a little nausea keeps you sharp. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a Napa vineyard. My father walked me down the aisle, fully recovered and radiating pride. Sarah attended with her girlfriend midway through her psychology doctorate. Even my mother received an invitation, though she declined with a formal note wishing us well. Some bridges remained burned, and that was okay. Lisa served as maid of honor, crying through her entire speech about friendship and transformation. Alexander's parents flew in from London, his mother photographing everything with artist's eye. The whole event felt like us. Elegant but warm, small but significant traditional elements mixed with personal touches. "No stealing this one," Sarah joked during the reception, and we all laughed because enough time had passed to make pain into punchlines. Building an empire while building a marriage required constant calibration. Alexander and I scheduled our lives like CEOs because we were but protected our personal time fiercely. Sunday mornings were sacred. No emails, no calls, just us, and strong coffee in whatever neighborhood we decided to explore. We traveled for business and pleasure, sometimes blending, both always returning to our Pacific Heights home that had become a haven. Hawthorne Communications flourished under my leadership. I promoted diverse talent, landed groundbreaking campaigns, expanded into new markets. We became known for work that didn't just sell products, but shifted culture. My team created movements, not just messages. The industry took notice. Awards accumulated, competitors poached unsuccessfully. Clients waited months for our availability. "You've built something special," Patricia told me at an industry gala where I was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at 32. Not just successful, significant. I had a good teacher. "You had good instincts. I just gave you permission to trust them." The call about my father came on a Wednesday afternoon between meetings. Not a heart attack this time, a diagnosis. Prostate cancer, caught early, treatable, but requiring aggressive intervention. I flew out that night, Alexander insisting I take the company jet. "Go," he said. "Everything else can wait." I found my father in his workshop sanding a table with methodical precision. He looked older but not frail, wearing his diagnosis with the same quiet dignity he'd worn everything else. "The doctors say the prognosis is good," he said without preamble. "Surgery next month, then radiation. I should be around to annoy you for years yet." "Dad." "I'm not scared, sweetheart. Well, not much. Mostly I'm grateful for catching it early, for having good insurance, for getting to see you become everything I knew you could be." We spent the next hours talking, really talking, in ways we never had when I lived here. He showed me his photography evolved from hobby to passion, images of industrial decay transformed into art, finding beauty in abandonment, a metaphor for our family, though neither of us said it aloud. "I'm proud of you," he said as I prepared to leave. "Not just the success, the way you handled betrayal, the life you built, the person you became. Your mother never understood. Strength isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself." "Have you heard from her?" "Christmas cards. She's living in Monterey full-time now. Rebuilt her life around new societies, new committees. Still crafting narratives, I imagine, just for a different audience." "Do you miss her?" "I miss who I thought she was, but that person might never have existed." He squeezed my shoulder. "We all have our fantasies. The lucky ones learn to prefer reality." I stayed through his surgery, working remotely while he recovered. Sarah came too, bringing psychological insights and terrible hospital coffee. We fell into an easy rhythm, sisters again, without the weight of competition. She'd found herself in graduate school, specializing in family trauma and manipulation. Her thesis on narcissistic mothers in traditional family structures was apparently groundbreaking. "I should thank Mom," she said one evening as we sat in Dad's room. "Without her, I'd never have found my calling." Turning pain into purpose? Something like that. My advisor says I have unusual insight into family dynamics. Wonder where that comes from. Dad recovered well the cancer caught before spreading. I flew back and forth regularly, building bridges with time and presence. Alexander came sometimes, winning my father over with woodworking knowledge and genuine interest. They collaborated on furniture pieces that sold for shocking amounts at charity auctions. 5 years into my tenure as CEO, everything aligned. Hawthorne was valued at 10 times what it had been when I took over. My marriage thrived on mutual respect and maintained independence. My family had found its new configuration, smaller but healthier. I thought I'd reached the summit of success. Then Alexander came home with news that changed everything. "I've been offered something," he said over dinner. Chairman of the International Venture Capital Association. It would mean traveling, constantly reshaping global investment strategies, working with governments and major institutions. That's incredible. You have to take it. It's based in London. I'd be gone more than I'm here. We stared at each other across the table, weighing love against ambition, partnership against opportunity. It was my family's crisis in reverse. What happened when both people were too much, too driven, too unwilling to make themselves small? "We'll make it work," I said finally. "We always do." "You sure?" "No, but certainty is overrated. We're good at impossible, remember." He took the position. We juggled time zones and airports, quality over quantity, fierce intention making up for physical distance. It was hard and perfect and completely us. My mother would have been horrified. I'd never been happier. "No regrets?" Alexander asked one morning, calling from London as I watched San Francisco sunrise. "None. Only that I can't kiss you through the phone. Technology's improving. Give it time. I love you, impossibly. I love you too, statistically." The announcement for Hawthorne's anniversary gala went out 8 months later. 30 years of excellence, 5 under my leadership. The grandest celebration in company history, honoring past while showcasing future. The guest list read like a who's who of business and culture. Media coverage was guaranteed to be extensive. I sent invitations to my entire family, even my mother. It was time to show them what I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. Not from spite or vengeance, but from the simple desire to close circles. They'd written me out of their story. Now they could see the epic I'd written myself. "Ready for this?" Alexander asked, reviewing the final guest list. "I've been ready for years." "That's my girl. Show them what empire looks like." The night was approaching when all the scattered pieces of my life would converge in one glittering room. The girl they'd broken had become a woman they couldn't ignore. The stage was set for the ultimate reversal. All that remained was the performance. The Hawthorne Communications 30th Anniversary Gala required 6 months of meticulous planning. As CEO, I could have delegated the entire event, but this was personal. Every detail needed to reflect not just the company's success, but the transformation of the girl who'd fled San Francisco in tears to the woman who now ruled its business landscape. "The St. Regis is available," my assistant Lauren suggested during our initial planning meeting. "They can accommodate 800 guests." "Book it," I said without hesitation. "The grand ballroom and the terrace, we'll need both." The venue was just the beginning. I assembled a team of the city's best event planners, florists, and caterers. The theme emerged organically: evolution of excellence. It would showcase Hawthorne's history while highlighting our revolutionary present and future. More importantly, it would be the social event of the year, the kind of gathering no one with pretensions to relevance could afford to miss. "The guest list is crucial," I told my team. "Start with our clients and partners, then expand to include major figures in tech, finance, and media. I want diversity of industry and influence. Make it impossible to ignore." Alexander watched me strategize from across our living room, amused by my intensity. "You're planning this like a military campaign." "In a way it is. The last time my family saw me, I was fleeing in defeat. Now they'll see me in victory. That requires precision." "And the actual invitations to your family, those require special handling." I designed their invitations personally, elegant black cards with gold embossing the kind of weighty paper that suggested importance. Inside calligraphy spelled out the details with formal perfection. But the key was the routing. I didn't send them directly. That would seem desperate. Instead, I ensured they received them through channels that made declining impossible. For my father recovering well from his treatment, I simply called, "Dad, I'm hosting a major event for Hawthorne. I'd love for you to come." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away, sweetheart. Can I bring someone?" "Of course. Who?" "Her name's Margaret. We met at the cancer support group. She's special." "Dad, that's wonderful. I can't wait to meet her." Sarah received hers through her doctoral advisor, who served on a nonprofit board with me. "Your sister's creating quite a stir," Professor Williams told her. "This gala invitation is the hottest ticket in the city. You must be so proud." For my mother, I employed more strategic channels. The invitation arrived via Eleanor Whitfield, president of the Monterey Cultural Foundation, and my mother's new social arbiter. I donated significantly to their recent capital campaign, earning Eleanor's genuine gratitude and strategic alliance. "Darling, you simply must attend," Eleanor gushed to my mother at their weekly bridge game, loud enough for the entire club to hear. "The Patterson girl has become quite the force in San Francisco. Everyone who's anyone will be there. I've already coordinated with the Pemberton divorce attorney. Richard won't dare show his face, so you needn't worry about awkwardness." My mother, trapped between pride and social pressure, had no graceful way to decline. James received his through professional channels. His construction company had bid on a Hawthorne client's project. The invitation arrived with a note from our facilities director about potential future partnerships. Purely business, impossible to interpret as personal, but equally impossible to ignore, given the networking opportunities. As RSVPs poured in, the event took shape with breathtaking scope. Tech CEOs confirmed alongside Hollywood executives. Venture capitalists mingled with artists on the guest list. The mayor's office called to confirm attendance. 3 major publications requested exclusive access for profiles. "This is becoming bigger than just an anniversary party," Lauren noted, reviewing responses. "Good. The bigger the stage, the clearer the message. Alexander flew in from London a week before the event, finding our apartment transformed into Command Central. Seating charts covered the dining table, vendor contracts filled my home office, and I'd taken to pacing while dictating final arrangements. "When did you last eat?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "Coffee counts as food, right?" "Not in any culture I'm aware of. Come on, we're going to dinner. The gala will be perfect because you're behind it. But you need to be perfect too, which requires actual nutrition." He was right as usual. Over salmon at our favorite restaurant, I finally voiced the fear lurking beneath all my planning. What if they don't come? Your family. Then they miss the event of the decade and confirm they're fools. But they'll come. Curiosity alone will compel them. What if I see them and fall apart? What if all this success means nothing when faced with their judgment? Then I'll be right beside you, reminding you that you're the CEO of a major company, that you've built an empire from nothing, that their opinions stopped mattering the day you chose yourself over their scripts. He took my hand. "You're not that 26-year-old girl anymore, Marilyn. You're a force of nature. Time they saw that." The week of the gala blurred with final preparations. My team executed flawlessly, transforming the St. Regis into something from a dream. Thousands of white orchids created ethereal installations. Crystal chandeliers supplemented the existing fixtures, making the ballroom sparkle like a jewel box. The terrace overlooked the city lights, heated towers ensuring comfort despite San Francisco's perpetual chill. I selected my dress with Patricia's help. She'd flown in specifically for the event. We found it at a boutique in Paris during a quick trip. A custom creation in midnight blue silk that managed to be both powerful and feminine. The designer, recognizing the significance of the event, had embroidered subtle constellation patterns throughout the fabric. "You look like a CEO," Patricia said during the final fitting. "More importantly, you look like yourself." Nervous. Alexander asked the morning of the gala, finding me already awake at 5 a.m. reviewing speech notes. Terrified, exhilarated, ready. The holy trinity of important moments. He pulled me back to bed. "You need rest. Tonight will be perfect because you've made it so. But it will also be perfect because it's showcasing something already extraordinary. You." I dozed fitfully until noon, then surrendered to the army of professionals who'd arrived to prepare me. Hair swept into an elegant chignon that showcased the diamond earrings Alexander had given me for our anniversary. Makeup that enhanced, rather than masked, projecting confidence and warmth. The dress fit perfectly, its constellation pattern catching light with every movement. "You're glowing," Lisa said when she arrived early to provide moral support. "Like you're lit from within." "That's terror disguised as radiance." "No, that's power recognizing itself. You've got this, Marilyn. You've already won. Tonight is just the victory lap." The first guests arrived at 6, and I positioned myself strategically to greet them. Each handshake, air kiss, and warm welcome built my confidence. These were my peers, now my colleagues and clients and competitors who respected what I'd built. Their admiration wasn't performative. It was earned. "Magnificent event," the CEO of a Fortune 500 company told me. Though not surprising given the source. "You've transformed Hawthorne into something special." Alexander stayed close, but not hovering, his presence a steady anchor as the room filled. By 7, the space hummed with power and possibility. Every conversation held potential deals, partnerships, innovations. I'd created not just a party, but a nexus of influence. Then I saw them. My father entered first with an elegant woman in her 60s, who must have been Margaret. He looked healthy, distinguished in his tuxedo eyes, searching until they found me. His smile was pure pride. Sarah followed, stunning in green silk, accompanied by a confident woman with close-cropped silver hair. Her girlfriend, Dr. Chen, who I'd heard about but never met. Behind them, as if armor could protect against the past, came my mother. Eleanor had aged gracefully but deliberately, every line earned through years of careful control. Her burgundy gown was expensive but dated, her jewelry substantial but old-fashioned. She moved through my glittering crowd like visiting royalty from a deposed kingdom, maintaining dignity while clearly recognizing the shift in power. "Showtime." Alexander murmured, his hand briefly touching my back. I made my way toward them, stopping to greet other guests along the way, building momentum and allies with each interaction. By the time I reached my family, I had a small coterie of admirers in tow, including the lieutenant governor and a celebrity entrepreneur. "Dad," I said, warmly kissing his cheek. "You look wonderful, Margaret. I'm so pleased to finally meet you." "Marilyn, this is spectacular," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've outdone yourself." "Just getting started," I assured him, then turned to Sarah. "Dr. Chen Sarah's told me such impressive things about your research. I'm delighted you could join us." Sarah hugged me briefly, whispering, "You look like a queen." "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, meaning it. Graduate school had given her a confidence that radiated from within, no longer borrowed from others' perceptions. Finally, I faced my mother. The crowd around us seemed to hold its breath, sensing drama. "Mother, thank you for coming." "Marilyn," she nodded regally as if granting me audience. "Quite an elaborate affair." "Hawthorne deserves the best. We all do, don't you think?" Before she could respond with something cutting, Patricia appeared at my elbow. "Marilyn, the Premier of British Columbia, is asking for you. Something about expanding our Vancouver offices." She smiled at my mother with professional charm. "Eleanor, isn't it? I remember your reference letter. How fascinating to see how wrong one can be about one's own children." My mother's face flushed, but Patricia had already steered me away toward more important conversations. The dismissal was complete and public. The power dynamic had shifted absolutely. "Ruthless," Alexander commented later as we circulated. "Patricia's a master. She taught me everything about strategic kindness. Kill them with success, bury them with grace." The evening progressed with orchestrated precision. Dinner featured courses paired with wines from women-owned vineyards, a subtle nod to empowerment that wasn't lost on the audience. Between courses, screens displayed Hawthorne's evolution, including significant focus on the Asian expansion I'd spearheaded. "That's you," I heard someone tell their companion during a video of our Tokyo opening, the blonde giving the presentation in perfect Japanese. I delivered my CEO speech after the main course, standing at a podium that put me above the crowd literally and figuratively. I spoke about innovation transformation, the courage to reinvent institutions and ourselves. I thanked mentors and partners, acknowledging Patricia with special warmth. When I mentioned our international expansion, I caught Alexander's eye and smiled. "Success isn't just about building something new," I concluded. "It's about honoring what came before, while having the courage to evolve beyond it." Hawthorne Communications stands as proof that tradition and innovation can dance together, creating something more beautiful than either alone. Here's to 30 years of excellence and to 30 more of evolution. The standing ovation felt like vindication made audible. Among those applauding, I saw my father wiping tears, Sarah beaming with genuine pride, and my mother clapping with precise, measured movements that betrayed nothing. As dessert was served, an architectural marvel of chocolate and gold leaf, James appeared at the edge of my vision. He'd aged in interesting ways, success and failure carving new lines in his face. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his champagne glass in a silent toast, then turned back to his companion, a pretty brunette, who looked appropriately adoring. Some ghosts were better left unengaged. "Dance with me," Alexander said as a jazz quartet began playing on the terrace. "People are watching." "Good. Let them see how a power couple moves." We danced under the stars and heat lamps, the city sparkling below. Other couples joined us, creating a scene from a movie about lives well lived. I spotted my father dancing with Margaret, their chemistry obvious and heartwarming. Sarah and Dr. Chen swayed together, lost in their own world. Even my mother had been claimed by a silver-haired gentleman for a properly formal waltz. No drama, Alexander noted. Disappointed? Relieved. The best revenge truly is a life well lived, and an empire well built. Speaking of which, I have news. The London position is evolving. They want me to create a San Francisco satellite office, run the global operation, but be based here. I stopped dancing. Really? Really. Turns out transcontinental marriages are challenging even for evolved couples. Plus, I miss you desperately, and London's appeals fade without you there. When? Next month. I've already found office space in your building. We'll be workplace neighbors. I kissed him there on the terrace, not caring who saw. The night was already perfect, but this transformed it into something magical. My empire was complete. Professional success, personal happiness, family reconciliation on my terms. I love you, I told him. Statistically, impossibly, and completely. Those are my words. We share everything, remember, even romantic mathematics. The party continued past midnight deals being struck over cognac future collaborations born from champagne conversations. My family had long since departed, Dad with warm hugs and promises to visit soon, Sarah with whispered congratulations, and genuine affection, Mother with formal farewells and what might have been respect in her eyes. You did it, Lisa said as the last guests departed. You showed them all who you really are. No, I corrected, surveying my glittering empire. I showed myself. The week following the gala brought a media storm that exceeded even my ambitious expectations. Forbes ran a feature titled, "The CEO Who Rebuilt Herself," complete with photos from the event that made our gathering look like the apex of power and glamour it had been. Business Insider analyzed our client list and projected revenue growth. Even Vogue requested an interview about power dressing for the modern female CEO. But it was the personal aftermath that proved most interesting. Sarah called first the morning after while I was nursing coffee and reviewing coverage. "That was extraordinary," she said without preamble. "I knew you'd become successful, but seeing it in person, Marilyn, you've built something incredible." "Thank you." "I mean it. Watching you work that room, seeing how people responded to you, it was like watching a master class in power. Mom nearly choked on her champagne when the mayor asked for your advice on city economic development." "How is she handling it?" "With typical Eleanor Patterson grace, which means she's telling everyone in Monterey that she always knew you'd be successful, that she pushed you toward greatness through strategic challenge. She's actually taking credit for your empire." "Of course she is." "The thing is, I think she might actually believe it. She's rewritten history in her mind so thoroughly that she's the hero of your story." "Let her. We both know the truth." Sarah paused. "I'm proud to be your sister. I know we lost years, and that's mostly my fault, but I'm grateful we're finding our way back." "Me too." "Also, Dr. Chen wants to know if you'd consider speaking at her psychology conference about corporate leadership and overcoming family trauma. No pressure, but she thinks your story could help a lot of people." "Send me the details, I'll consider it." My father visited the following week, bringing Margaret for lunch at Hawthorne. Seeing him in my office, taking in the view and the visible signs of success, filled me with complex emotions. "This is magnificent, sweetheart," he said, examining the awards lining one wall. "You've built something lasting." I had good inspiration. Someone who taught me that creating things with your own hands matters. "I built furniture. You built an empire. Slight difference in scale." "Same principle. Take raw materials, add vision and skill, create something valuable." Margaret proved to be delightful, a retired teacher with a sharp wit and gentle manner who clearly adored my father. Watching them together over lunch, I saw him bloom in ways he never had with my mother. He touched Margaret's hand, freely laughed, without reservation, expressed opinions without checking for approval. "She's good for you," I told him privately before they left. "She sees me," he said simply. "Not who she wants me to be, but who I am. At my age, that's a gift beyond measure." "You deserve to be seen." "So did you. I'm sorry it took me so long to really look." The unexpected visitor came Thursday afternoon. Lauren knocked on my office door with an uncertain expression. "There's an Eleanor Patterson here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." My mother. Here in my domain without invitation or warning. I considered refusing, then decided confrontation on my territory held advantages. Send her in, but interrupt after 15 minutes with something urgent. Eleanor entered my office like she was granting me an audience rather than the reverse. She dressed carefully. New designer suit, fresh highlights, jewelry that suggested prosperity without ostentation. But in my space, surrounded by my success, she looked diminished. "Marilyn, thank you for seeing me." "Mother, this is unexpected." "May I sit?" I gestured to the chairs across from my desk, deliberately maintaining the power position. She sat carefully, taking in the office, the view, the visible evidence of everything I'd achieved without her. "The gala was impressive," she began. "You've clearly made something of yourself." "Despite your best efforts to prevent it?" "Because of my efforts to motivate you," she corrected smoothly. "I knew traditional support would make you soft. You needed opposition to develop strength." "Is that the story you're telling yourself?" "It's the truth. Every obstacle I put in your path made you more determined. Every criticism pushed you to excel. Even James." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Do not attempt to reframe emotional manipulation and betrayal as some kind of twisted mentorship. You didn't strengthen me, Mother. I strengthened myself despite you." "You were always so dramatic." "I was honest, still am, which is why I'll ask directly. Why are you really here?" She shifted slightly the first crack in her facade. "The divorce was finalized last month. I received a substantial settlement, but Richard managed to hide significant assets. My lawyer says pursuing them would cost more than I'd recover." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? I rather thought you'd be pleased. The woman who wronged you getting her comeuppance." "I don't take pleasure in anyone's pain, Mother. Not even yours. I'm too busy building my life to celebrate anyone else's destruction." How noble. The sarcasm was sharp but brittle. I suppose Alexander has helped with that. He seems substantial. He's extraordinary. Nothing like James. No, nothing at all like the man you coerced into betraying me through threats and manipulation. She flinched at my directness. "You know about that?" "I've known for years. Just as I know about your affair with Richard, your financial manipulations, your systematic campaign to control your daughters' lives. Information is currency in my world, Mother. I'm very rich." "Then you know I've lost everything. My marriage, my position, most of my friends. Even Sarah barely speaks to me. What do you want from me? Money, connections, absolution? I want my daughter back." The words hung between us like a bridge too damaged to cross. I studied her face, searching for sincerity beneath the calculation. Perhaps it was there, buried under years of protective performance. But I'd learned to trust patterns over promises. Which daughter? The one you groomed to be decorative and dependent, or the one you tried to diminish because she threatened your worldview? You, the one who succeeded despite everything, the one who proved me wrong. Ah, so you want the successful daughter, the CEO whose connections could restore your social standing, the one whose forgiveness would validate your revisionist history. That's cruel. That's accurate. You don't want me, Mother. You want what I represent, what I could do for you. That's not the same as love. I do love you. In your way, perhaps, but your love comes with conditions, expectations, and manipulation. I've built a life free from all three. Lauren knocked, entering with practiced urgency. Ms. Patterson, the Tokyo office is holding on line 1, and the board meeting has been moved up. Thank you. I stood signaling the end of our meeting. Mother, I appreciate you coming. I wish you well in your new life, but I won't be part of it. She stood slowly, dignity wrapped around her like armor. You'll regret this. Family is all we have in the end. No, family is what we choose to build. I've built mine carefully with people who see me clearly and love me anyway. That was never you." She left without another word. I watched from my window as she exited the building, looking smaller against the cityscape than she'd ever seemed in my childhood. Perhaps that was growth, seeing parents as people rather than titans. "You okay?" Alexander asked that evening, finding me on our terrace with wine and thoughts. She wanted back into my life, my success, my forgiveness. "What did you say?" "No, kindly but firmly no." "Any regrets?" "None, but sadness, yes, for the relationship we might have had if she'd been capable of seeing me instead of her projection of me." "Her loss." "Everyone's loss, that's what makes it sad." He held me as the sun set over the bay, painting the sky in shades of ending and beginning. My phone buzzed with messages. Clients, colleagues, friends confirming dinner plans. My chosen family built on mutual respect rather than blood obligation. The next morning brought a handwritten note on Eleanor Patterson's formal stationery. "I see now that I raised a daughter stronger than I ever was. I'm proud of you, even if I have no right to be. Mother." I filed it carefully, evidence of something that might be growth or might be strategy. Time would tell. But I had an empire to run, a marriage to nurture, a life to live. The gathering storm of family drama had passed, leaving clear skies and certain purpose. "Ready for Tokyo?" Lauren asked, reviewing my calendar. "The expansion meeting is tomorrow." "Always ready." I confirmed already, thinking ahead to new challenges, new victories, new versions of myself to discover. The storm had gathered and dissipated. Now came the building of whatever would rise in its wake. 1 year after the anniversary gala, I stood in my office reviewing preparations for an even more significant event. This time, it wasn't about corporate celebration, but personal culmination. Alexander and I were hosting our 5th wedding anniversary party, a milestone that deserved recognition beyond private celebration. "The guest list is finalized," Lauren reported, tablet in hand. 300 confirmed, including some surprises from the Tokyo office flying in. "And my family," "all confirmed. Your father and Margaret, Sarah, and Dr. Chen. Even your mother, though she RSVP'd through her social secretary." The past year had brought tentative reconnection with Eleanor. Not reconciliation, that required trust we'd never rebuild, but a careful detente. She'd attended a few public events where our paths crossed, maintaining civil distance. Sarah reported that therapy was helping her confront her narcissistic patterns, though change came slowly at 60. Perfect. And the special announcement, Lauren smiled conspiratorially. "Only you, Alexander, and I know. The media packets are ready for distribution after your toast." The announcement would shake the business world. Alexander and I were merging our companies, creating the first fully integrated venture capital and marketing powerhouse. Northbridge Patterson would revolutionize how companies launched, scaled, and told their stories. We'd been planning secretly for months, ensuring every detail was perfect before going public. "This is about more than business," Alexander had said when we'd signed the preliminary papers. "It's about proving that two powerful people can build something together without diminishing either." The party was scheduled for Saturday at our Napa estate, a property we'd purchased 3 years prior and transformed into our private paradise. The November weather cooperated, providing crisp air and clear skies that showed off the valley's autumnal glory. Guests would arrive at sunset, gathering for cocktails before dinner. In the restored barn we'd converted into an entertainment space. I dressed carefully. A rose gold gown that Alexander had commissioned from my favorite designer, paired with the diamond necklace he'd given me that morning. 5 years of impossible, made possible. The card had read. "Here's to 50 more. You're glowing," Lisa observed, helping me with final touches. She'd flown in early, claiming best friend privileges. "Success, love, and secrets agree with you." Everything agrees with me these days. I've finally learned to agree with myself. The first guests arrived as the sun painted the sky magnificent oranges and purples. I stood with Alexander at the entrance, greeting each arrival with genuine warmth. These were our people, colleagues who'd become friends, mentors who'd become family, chosen relatives who'd proven their loyalty through action rather than blood. My father arrived early, Margaret on his arm, both radiating the contentment of lives rebuilt. He hugged me fiercely, whispering, "Your grandmother would be so proud. You inherited her steel." Sarah and Dr. Chen followed my sister, looking professorial in sleek black. Her psychology practice was thriving, specializing in helping adults overcome family trauma. She'd found her calling in healing others while healing herself. "Any words of wisdom for the happy couple?" I asked. "Don't let success become a substitute for connection," she said seriously, then grinned. "But knowing you two, you've already figured that balance out." The party filled with laughter and conversation deals being discussed over champagne friendships, deepening over shared stories. I moved through the crowd with Alexander, sometimes together, sometimes apart, always aware of each other's location, like magnets sensing their match. Then Eleanor arrived. She'd chosen silver, a color that suggested wisdom and acceptance. Her entrance was subtle. No grand gestures or attention-seeking. She found me during a quiet moment, approaching with something I'd rarely seen: uncertainty. "Marilyn, congratulations on 5 years. The party is lovely." "Thank you for coming." I brought something." She handed me a small wrapped box. "Not for now, for later, when you're ready." I accepted it carefully. "That's thoughtful." I'm trying to learn thoughtfulness. It's harder than manipulation, but ultimately more satisfying. She smiled ruefully. "My therapist would be proud. I'm acknowledging my toxic patterns." Growth is possible at any age. So I'm discovering. Slowly and painfully, but discovering nonetheless. She glanced around the gathering. "You've built something beautiful here. The life, the love, the empire, all of it." "Thank you." "I mean it. I may not have supported your path, but I can recognize its value now. You were right to choose yourself." Before I could respond, she moved away, finding her place among other guests. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was recognition. Sometimes that was enough. Dinner was a masterpiece of coordination. 5 courses paired with wines from our own vineyard's first harvest. Speeches flowed between courses, friends and colleagues sharing stories of watching us build our separate and joint successes. Patricia, now fully retired, but still formidable, commanded attention with her toast. I've watched many power couples implode under the weight of competing ambitions, she said, champagne raised. But Marilyn and Alexander have discovered the secret. They don't compete. They collaborate. They don't diminish each other. They amplify. Here's to love that multiplies rather than divides. Finally, it was time for our announcement. Alexander and I stood together, hands linked, facing our assembled empire. 5 years ago, I began, we promised to make impossible things possible. Tonight, we're keeping that promise in a new way. Northbridge Ventures and Hawthorne Communications have been dancing around each other for years, Alexander continued. Sharing clients, collaborating on launches, building synergies. It's time to formalize what's already true. We're merging, I announced, letting the gasps and murmurs ripple through the crowd. Creating Northbridge Patterson, the first fully integrated venture and marketing firm. We'll fund innovation and ensure the world knows about it. The reaction was immediate and electric. Board members who'd been briefed smiled knowingly. Competitors looked stunned. Media members present immediately began texting racing to break the story. "But that's business," Alexander said, raising his glass. "Tonight is personal. To my wife, my partner, my equal in all things. You've made me better at everything, including being myself." To my husband, I responded, who sees my ambition as an asset, not a threat, who makes impossible things possible by believing they already are. We toasted, kissed, and accepted the thunderous applause. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment when personal and professional success merged as completely as our companies would. "How's that for a power move?" Lisa whispered during the celebration. "You've literally merged your empires." "Just making external what's always been internal. We've been partners from the beginning." The party continued past midnight deals being struck over dessert wine, future collaborations born from anniversary champagne. But the most significant moment came quietly as I opened my mother's gift in our bedroom after the last guest departed. Inside the small box was a gold locket, clearly antique. Opening it revealed 2 photos, one of me at age 5, grinning toothlessly at the camera, and one from the recent gala, confident and crowned with success. The note was brief. "The daughter I tried to mold, and the woman you molded yourself into. I'm learning to love them both. Mother." Alexander found me holding it, tears streaming silently. "You okay?" "It's not an apology. It's not absolution, but it's something. Sometimes something is enough to start. She'll never be the mother I wanted, but maybe she can be the mother she's capable of being. And maybe that's its own form of success." We stood together on our bedroom balcony, looking out over the valley we'd claimed as our own. The merger announcement would dominate business news tomorrow. Our combined empire would reshape industries. But tonight, in the quiet after triumph, we were just 2 people who'd built a life together against all odds. "No regrets?" he asked our traditional check-in. "None, only that we didn't merge the companies sooner. Think of the efficiency." "Romance is dead," I laughed. "Romance is evolved. We express love through strategic integration and optimized market positioning." "I love you too," I said, understanding his language perfectly. The night of reckoning had arrived not with drama or confrontation, but with quiet recognition of how far we'd all come. My mother learning accountability, my sister finding purpose, my father choosing happiness, and me standing with my husband and partner, having built not just one empire, but 2, soon to be unified. "What's next?" Alexander asked. "We've conquered business, perfected marriage, revolutionized industry. What mountains are left?" I thought of the quiet secret I'd been carrying confirmed just that morning. The next impossible thing we'd make possible, but that announcement could wait for a private moment. "Whatever's next," I said instead, "we'll face it together." "Statistically impossible, yet actually inevitable," he agreed. We went inside, leaving the valley to its darkness and peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, merged companies to navigate, an empire to expand. But tonight, we'd celebrated 5 years of proving that 2 ambitious people could build something greater together than apart. The night of reckoning had become a night of recognition. And that perhaps was the greatest triumph of all. The merger announcement sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley and beyond. By Monday morning, Northbridge Patterson was valued at numbers that made my head spin, even as someone accustomed to high-stakes finance. But it was Tuesday's revelation that truly changed everything. We'd gathered the senior teams from both companies in Hawthorne's largest conference room. Integration planning required delicate handling. 2 successful cultures becoming one without losing what made each special. I was outlining the communication strategy when a wave of nausea hit so strongly I had to grip the podium. "Marilyn." Alexander's concern cut through the buzzing in my ears. "I'm fine." I managed, then promptly proved myself wrong by fainting. I woke in our office's medical suite with Alexander hovering anxiously, and Dr. Rebecca Chen, our corporate physician, checking my vitals. "When's the last time you ate?" she asked. "This morning. Yesterday. It's been busy with the merger." "Any other symptoms? Fatigue, nausea, dizziness?" I glanced at Alexander, decision made. "I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks. I was planning to tell you more romantically," I added to my stunned husband. His face cycled through emotions. Shock, joy, concern, back to joy. "Pregnant," he repeated. "We're having a baby." "Having a baby and running a multi-billion-dollar merger," Dr. Chen said dryly. "No pressure there. You need rest, regular meals, and probably a reality check about maintaining this pace while growing a human." News of my pregnancy couldn't be contained to our executive team. By evening, congratulations poured in from around the world, but it was the family reactions that proved most interesting. My father cried when I called him. "A grandchild. Oh, sweetheart, this is wonderful. Margaret and I are here for whatever you need." Sarah screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "I'm going to be an aunt. Can I teach them psychology?" "Never mind, I'll just spoil them rotten." Eleanor's response came via handwritten note the next day. "A child changes everything. I pray you'll be the mother I couldn't figure out how to be. Congratulations." The pregnancy transformed our merger plans. Suddenly, we weren't just building a company, but a legacy. Every decision carried new weight. This business would be our child's inheritance, financial and philosophical. "We need better parental leave policies," I announced at our next board meeting. "Industry leading, for all parents, regardless of gender or adoption status." "That's expensive," one board member noted. "So is losing talent because we don't support families. This isn't charity. It's strategic investment in human capital." The vote was unanimous. Northbridge Patterson would offer 6 months paid leave for all new parents, with gradual re-entry options and on-site childcare. The announcement generated massive positive press and a flood of applications from top talent. "You're already changing the world for our child," Alexander said that night, his hand resting on my still flat stomach. "Our child deserves a world worth inheriting. That means companies that value humans, not just profits." The pregnancy progressed alongside the merger, both requiring constant attention and adjustment. Morning sickness hit during crucial negotiations. Baby kicks punctuated board presentations. My body transformed as dramatically as our companies, both changes visible to everyone watching. "You're glowing" became the constant refrain, though I suspected pregnancy hormones got too much credit for what was actually happiness. We found out we were having a daughter during the 20-week ultrasound. Alexander cried openly while I stared at the screen, mesmerized by the tiny person we'd created. "A daughter," I whispered. "What if I'm like my mother? What if I can't—" "Stop." Alexander kissed my forehead. "You're nothing like Eleanor. You know who you are, what you value. Our daughter will grow up seeing a mother who chose her own path and helped others do the same. Promise you'll tell me if I start manipulating her into predetermined roles." "I promise, but you won't. You'll probably encourage her to overthrow established systems by age 5. The final trimester coincided with the merger's completion. I waddled through integration meetings, chaired board discussions between Braxton Hicks contractions, and filmed the announcement video while our daughter performed acrobatics against my ribs. "You're insane," Patricia told me during a visit. "Most women would be nesting. You're revolutionizing an industry while gestating. Multitasking is my superpower." "No, love is. Love for your work, your husband, your coming child. That's what makes all this possible." She was right. Everything I'd built stemmed from choosing love over fear, creation over destruction. Now I was creating the ultimate project, a new life who'd inherit not just wealth, but wisdom. Labor started during a conference call with Tokyo. I finished the quarterly projections between contractions, earning horrified admiration from my team. "Only you would deliver a baby and a profit report simultaneously," Lisa said, driving us to the hospital while Alexander panicked beautifully in the back seat. Sophia Alexandra Fitzgerald Patterson arrived after 16 hours of labor that made corporate negotiations look easy. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and lungs that suggested she'd inherited my ability to command attention. "She's beautiful," Alexander whispered, tears streaming as he held her for the first time. "Look what we made." "Look what we'll make her into," I corrected, then reconsidered. "No, look who she'll make herself into with our support." The maternity suite filled with flowers from around the world. Clients, competitors, and colleagues sent congratulations. But it was the family visits that carried weight. Dad and Margaret arrived first, bearing handmade wooden toys he'd crafted in his workshop. "For my granddaughter," he said proudly, "built with love and sustainable materials." Sarah brought an embarrassingly large teddy bear and a promise to be the aunt who encouraged questionable decisions. Someone needs to balance out all the strategic planning she'll grow up with. Eleanor came last alone, carrying a small package. She approached the hospital bed cautiously, as if afraid of breaking something. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward Sophia. I nodded, watching my mother hold my daughter with practiced ease that reminded me she'd done this before, had once been the young mother I was now. "She's perfect," Eleanor said softly, unmarked by expectations or disappointments. "Pure potential." "That's the goal, to let her become whoever she's meant to be." "I failed at that with you." The admission came quietly, without drama. "I tried to shape you into my image instead of letting you shape yourself. I see that now." "Mom." "No, let me say this. Watching you these past years, seeing what you've built when I stopped interfering, it's taught me something. Love isn't about control. It's about support. I couldn't support your choices because they threatened mine. That was my failing, not yours." She handed me the package. Inside was a silver rattle engraved with Sophia's initials. "It was yours," she explained, "before I decided who you should be when you were just my daughter full of possibility. Maybe Sophia can have it without the weight of its history." "Thank you." She kissed Sophia's forehead gently, then mine, the first maternal gesture that felt genuine in years. "Be the mother I couldn't be. Trust yourself. You've already proven you know how to build beautiful things." After she left Alexander and I sat in comfortable silence, our daughter sleeping between us. The empire we'd built hummed along without us. Good leadership meant creating systems that functioned independently, but this tiny person required constant presence, immediate response, total vulnerability. "Scared?" Alexander asked. "Terrified, but ready. You..." "Same, though at least babies don't require PowerPoint presentations." "Give her time, she's our daughter. She'll probably disrupt industries from her high chair." "Speaking of disruption, when do we tell them about the foundation?" "The Fitzgerald Patterson Foundation, our next impossible project, using merger profits to fund women entrepreneurs globally, particularly mothers re-entering the workforce. We'd assembled the board secretly waiting for the right moment to launch. After I figure out how to shower with a newborn, priorities." He laughed. Sophia stirred, and I felt complete in ways success alone had never achieved. The revelation wasn't that having it all was possible. It was that all meant different things at different times. Right now, all meant this room, these people, this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, running a merged company while raising a daughter, modeling ambition without sacrificing presence, teaching her to build her own empire while showing her she was already enough. But tonight in this hospital room with my chosen and blood families, merged as completely as our companies, I had everything. The girl who'd fled San Francisco in tears had become a woman who created her own definitions of success. "No regrets?" Alexander asked our familiar refrain. "None. Except maybe not negotiating epidurals earlier in my birth plan. I'll make a note for next time." Next time. Statistically speaking, successful first ventures often lead to expansion. Let me figure out how to keep one tiny human alive before we discuss market growth. We settled into comfortable silence, 3 hearts beating in proximity empire builders at rest. Tomorrow would demand everything. Tonight, we were just a family newly formed and infinitely possible. The biggest revelation was the smallest person. Sophia had arrived, and with her, a new chapter in our impossible, made possible story. Sophia's first birthday party could have been a corporate event. The guest list included CEOs, venture capitalists, and enough collective net worth to fund a small country. But I'd insisted on simplicity. A garden party at our Napa estate with close family and friends. No media, no networking, just celebration of surviving our first year as parents while running a merged empire. "She's walking," Sarah squealed as Sophia toddled between guests, her determination evident in every wobbly step. "Look at that focus. Definitely her mother's daughter." The way she analyzes each step before taking it suggests her father's influence. Alexander countered pride, evident as he shadowed her progress, ready to catch falls that rarely came. I watched from the shade, exhausted but content. The past year had tested every skill I'd developed. Negotiating with a screaming infant proved harder than billion-dollar deals. But we'd thrived, all three of us, finding our rhythm in the beautiful chaos. "Graham, Graham!" Sophia shrieked, spotting my mother across the garden. Eleanor's transformation continued to surprise everyone, including herself. She'd become a devoted grandmother, visiting monthly, respecting boundaries, while offering support. Therapy had given her tools to recognize manipulation patterns before acting on them. "Hello, darling one," she cooed, lifting Sophia carefully. "Shall we see the flowers?" "Let them go," Alexander advised, noting my watchful tension. "She's trying. That matters." He was right. Eleanor's efforts, while imperfect, were genuine. She'd even started volunteering with our foundation, using her social connections to identify women needing business support. Redemption came slowly, but it came. "Mama's empire," Patricia laughed, joining me as Sophia commanded attention like a tiny CEO. "She's already got leadership presence." "Nature or nurture?" "Both. Plus, look at her role models." She gestured around the garden, where successful women mingled freely with stay-at-home parents, where fathers discussed childcare between merger strategies, where traditional roles blurred into individual choices. "It's different from what we had," I mused. "You made it different. That's the point." The foundation had exceeded every projection. We'd funded 300 women-owned businesses in our first year, focusing on mothers returning to work and women in developing nations. Each success story reinforced my belief that supporting others' ambitions multiplied rather than diminished our own. "Speech time," Lisa announced, tapping her champagne glass. But before I could stand, Sarah took the makeshift stage. "I know this is Sophia's day, but I have news. Dr. Chen and I are adopting. We're about to become mothers ourselves." The garden erupted in congratulations. I hugged my sister fiercely, whispering, "You'll be amazing." "I learned from watching you, both what to do and what not to do." The not-to-do list is extensive, but the to-do list is inspiring. Love fiercely, trust yourself, build something meaningful. That's your legacy. Dad spoke next, Margaret beside him. "Watching my girls become mothers, seeing them break cycles and build new ones, it's the greatest gift of my later years. Though Sophia calling me Pop-Pop runs a close second. To family," he raised his glass, "both born and built." To family, we echoed the word, carrying weight it had never held in my childhood. As afternoon faded to evening, guests departed, leaving just immediate family. Sophia had crashed from her sugar high, sleeping in Alexander's arms with the complete trust of the safely loved. We gathered on the terrace, multiple generations, sharing comfortable silence. "I've been thinking," Eleanor said carefully, "about patterns and legacy." "Dangerous territory," I warned but gently. "Necessary territory. I spent so many years trying to force you and Sarah into molds that fit my worldview. Small, safe, dependent. Everything I'd been taught women should be." She paused, gathering courage. "I see now that I was terrified. Of your potential, your choices, your ability to be everything I'd convinced myself was impossible." "Mom." "Please let me finish. I manipulated and controlled because I couldn't imagine women having real power. You've proven that wrong every single day since you left. Built companies, merged empires, raised a daughter without sacrificing yourself. You became everything I was too scared to dream of." "We all make choices within our circumstances," I offered. "Yes, but you changed the circumstances. For yourself, for Sophia, for thousands of women through your foundation. That's the legacy I wish I'd been brave enough to build." "You're building it now," Sarah said. "Every therapy session, every honest conversation, every time you support instead of control. That's creating new patterns." Eleanor wiped tears with characteristic discretion. "I hope Sophia never knows the grandmother I was, only the one I'm learning to be." "She'll know the whole story," I said firmly. "The mistakes and the growth. That's how she'll learn that change is possible, that people can evolve." "Even stubborn Patterson women?" Dad asked with a wry smile. "Especially stubborn Patterson women," Margaret confirmed, earning laughter from all of us. As night fell, Alexander and I walked through our vineyard, Sophia sleeping in her carrier against his chest. The vines, heavy with fruit, promised good harvest return on patient investment. "No regrets?" he asked our eternal question. "None that matter. Only that we can't freeze time. She's growing so fast." "That's the point. We're raising her to outgrow us, to build something even better than what we've created." Terrifying thought. Exhilarating thought. Imagine what her generation will accomplish with the foundations we're laying. We reached the hill's crest, our estate spreading below, lights twinkling from the house, where family still gathered. In San Francisco, our merged company created opportunities and innovations. Across the globe, our foundation supported women's dreams. And here, in my arms, our daughter breathed easily, surrounded by love and possibility. "You did it," Alexander said quietly. "Built your empire, kept your family, raised our daughter. The girl who left San Francisco in tears conquered everything." Not conquered, transformed. Conquest implies destruction. We built instead. Built beautifully. I thought of 26-year-old me, heartbroken and humiliated, unable to imagine this moment, how the pain had seemed endless, the betrayal insurmountable. Yet here I stood, successful beyond dreams, loved beyond measure, raising a daughter who'd never question her worth or potential. "Want to know a secret?" I whispered. "Always." "I'm pregnant again, just found out this morning." He stopped walking, joy spreading across his face like sunrise. "Another baby, another adventure. Think we can handle 2 while running an empire?" "Statistically improbable, therefore definitely yes." We kissed there on the hillside, Sophia between us, new life, secretly growing empire humming along below. The resolution wasn't an ending, but a continuation. Each challenge conquered, revealing new mountains to climb. Back at the house, I found my mother sitting alone on the porch, watching stars emerge. "Thank you," she said simply, "for letting me be here, for giving me chances I didn't deserve. Everyone deserves chances to grow. Not everyone takes them. You taught me that growth required admitting failure first. That's the hardest part, seeing yourself clearly. But the most necessary." She touched my hand briefly. "I'm proud of you. Not for the success everyone can see, but for the forgiveness no one else knows about. That's your greatest strength. Building bridges where others would build walls. Walls are easier, but bridges lead somewhere better." We sat quietly, 2 Patterson women who'd traveled hard roads to reach this peace. Inside, laughter erupted as Sarah told embarrassing stories about our childhood. Dad's voice rumbled in response, Margaret's tinkling laugh joining the chorus. Alexander appeared in the doorway, Sophia awakening in his arms. "Mama," she demanded, reaching for me with perfect trust. I took my daughter, feeling my mother's eyes on us. 3 generations of women, each shaped by the ones before, each choosing to shape differently. The pattern had broken, replaced by something stronger. Connection without control, love without manipulation, support without sacrifice of self. "Let's go inside," I suggested. "Family's waiting." We joined the others, Sophia immediately demanding attention from her aunt's grandfather and devoted Gram. I caught Alexander's eye across the room, sharing silent joy about our expanding family. The Foundation's gala was next month, the company's Asian expansion proceeding ahead of schedule, and life grew within me again. The empire stood strong, built on foundations of hard-won wisdom and chosen love. But more importantly, the family had healed not into what it had been, but into what it could become. We'd learned to celebrate each other's victories without competition, support dreams without judgment, love without conditions. Resolution hadn't come through confrontation, but through transformation. Redemption hadn't required forgetting the past, but learning from it. We'd all risen from our respective ashes phoenixes who chose to nest together despite singed wings. To families that choose to grow, Sarah added, to love that multiplies, I concluded, and to teaching our children they can have it all, just maybe not all at once. We drank to that to ourselves, to the journey that had brought us here. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, toddler tantrums and board meetings, pregnancy hormones and international negotiations. But tonight, we were simply a family that had learned to love each other not despite our ambitions, but because of them. The greatest empire I'd built wasn't measured in revenue or reach. It was this, a room full of people who'd grown into their best selves, supporting others to do the same. The girl who'd fled in tears had become a woman who stayed to build. And the building, it seemed, had just begun. 5 years later, I stood in the same St. Regis ballroom where I'd first revealed my empire to those who doubted me. But this time, the event wasn't about corporate celebration or personal vindication. This was bigger. The Fitzgerald Patterson Foundation's 5th annual gala, where we'd announce our most ambitious project yet. "Mommy, is this where you became important?" Sophia asked her 7-year-old wisdom wrapped in innocent curiosity. She stood beside me in a dress she'd insisted on choosing herself, a brilliant purple that matched her personality. "This is where Mommy showed people what she'd built," I corrected gently. "I was always important. We all are. Sometimes it just takes time for others to see it. Like how Graham needed glasses to see better." I smiled at her metaphor, more accurate than she knew. Exactly like that. Alexander appeared with 3-year-old James, named for redemption, not repetition. Our son had his father's analytical mind, and my stubborn streak a combination that promised future adventures. "The room's filling up," Alexander reported. "Are you ready for this? We're announcing a $100 million global initiative. I'm either completely ready or completely insane." "Why not both?" He kissed me softly. "That's what's made everything else work." The initiative would fund women-owned businesses in 50 countries, provide mentorship programs, and create childcare solutions that allowed mothers to pursue careers without sacrificing family. It was everything I'd wished for when building my own path, support that strengthened rather than limited. "There's my favorite CEO," Patricia's voice carried across the space. At 75, she remained formidable, serving as the foundation's board chair with the same intensity she'd once brought to business. "Patricia." Sophia ran to her honorary grandmother James, toddling behind. "Look how you've grown, both the children and the empire." She surveyed the room, filling with powerful women and supportive partners. "This is beyond what I imagined when I sent you to Tokyo. You started it all." "No, dear, I just opened a door. You built the house, the neighborhood, the entire city beyond it." My family arrived together, a sight that still surprised me. Dad and Margaret Sarah and Dr. Chen with their adopted twins, even Eleanor now genuinely integrated into our lives rather than orchestrating them. They moved through the crowd with earned belonging no longer defined by old wounds. "The Times wants a family photo," Lauren informed me. "They're doing a feature on dynasty building in the modern age." "A Patterson dynasty," Dad mused. "Who would have thought?" "Not the traditional kind," Eleanor added quickly. "Better, stronger, built on choice rather than convention." We gathered for the photo. 4 generations if you counted Margaret as the grandmother she'd become. The photographer captured us mid-laugh as James tried to escape, and Sophia corrected his technique. Imperfect, real, exactly us. The program began with video testimonials from women whose businesses we'd funded. A textile worker from Bangladesh who now employed 50 people. a single mother from Detroit whose coding academy had transformed her community. Story after story of ambition, supported dreams made manifest. Sarah took the stage first, speaking about transformation and healing. Her practice had evolved into a treatment center for family trauma, partially funded by the foundation. She'd found her calling in helping others break cycles her own journey, lending authenticity to her work. "My sister taught me that success isn't about having it all," she said, finding my eyes in the crowd. "It's about defining all for yourself, then building it with intention and support." Eleanor followed a choice that had shocked everyone when she'd volunteered, but her speech proved why recovery sometimes required public acknowledgement. "I spent decades trying to control my daughters' lives because I couldn't imagine women having real power," she said clearly. "I was wrong, catastrophically, damagingly wrong. But being wrong isn't the end. It's a beginning if you choose to learn." She spoke about her volunteer work, the women she'd met whose ambitions had been dismissed or diminished, how seeing their success had slowly rewired her understanding of what was possible. "My daughter built an empire despite my interference. Imagine what she might have built with support from the start. That's what this foundation provides. The support every woman deserves, regardless of who believes in them initially." The crowd applauded, some wiping tears. Redemption performed publicly hit differently than private apologies. Eleanor returned to her seat with dignity intact, but ego properly sized. Finally, my turn. I stood at the podium where I'd once announced a corporate merger, where I'd revealed professional triumph to those who'd expected personal failure. But tonight wasn't about me. 5 years ago, we started with a simple belief: when women succeed, everyone benefits. Tonight, we're taking that belief global. I outlined the initiative, the partnerships with governments and NGOs, the metrics for measuring not just business success, but life transformation. But I want to share something personal, too. I continued finding Alexander's supportive gaze. I'm often asked how I balance it all. CEO duties, foundation work, raising 2 children with a third on the way. Gasps rippled through the crowd at that revelation. Alexander grinned, already knowing but enjoying others' surprise. "The truth is, I don't balance. I integrate. I bring my children to board meetings when needed. I take calls during soccer practice. I show them that meaningful work and meaningful relationships aren't opposites. They're partners in building a complete life. Some days I'm a better CEO than mother. Other days I'm a better mother than CEO. Every day I'm wholly myself, teaching my daughter and sons that they can be too." This foundation exists because I learned something vital. Success isn't a zero-sum game. My achievements don't diminish yours. Your growth doesn't threaten mine. When we support each other's ambitions, we multiply possibilities exponentially. So tonight I challenge everyone here: find one woman whose dreams deserve support and provide it. Not charity, but investment. Not pity, but partnership. Build bridges where you once might have built walls. Choose collaboration over competition. Prove that lifting others lifts us all. The standing ovation felt different from 5 years ago. Then they'd applauded my success. Now they applauded our shared mission. The empire had evolved from personal achievement to collective movement. "Beautiful speech," Alexander said during the reception, pulling me briefly aside, "though you forgot to mention your latest impossible achievement." "Which one? There are so many these days." "The acquisition, it's finalized." I grinned. We'd quietly purchased my childhood home in Millbrae, planning to transform it into a center for young women entrepreneurs. Where manipulation once lived, mentorship would flourish. The poetry of it satisfied something deep within. "Mommy." Sophia appeared, tugging my dress. Gram's crying happy tears again. She says it's because you're magic. We're all magic, sweetheart. Some of us just take longer to discover our powers. The evening continued with announcements of partnerships, pledges of support, and stories of transformation. But the most meaningful moments came in quiet conversations. A young woman approaching Sarah for advice on escaping family pressure. Eleanor connecting a struggling mother with foundation resources, Dad teaching James woodworking basics with blocks from the children's area. "No regrets?" Alexander asked as we slow danced the gala winding down around us. "None, except maybe these heels. Pregnancy and stilettos are a problematic combination." I meant about everything. The journey, the choices, the path that led here. I considered it honestly. The pain of betrayal had catalyzed everything. Without it, I might have stayed small, safe, controlled. But that didn't make the pain good, just useful. "I regret the necessity," I said finally. That growth required such harsh fertilizer, but not the growth itself. Wise woman. Exhausted woman who's growing your third child while running multiple empires. Same thing, really. We danced until my feet demanded mercy, then gathered our children and family for goodbyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, board meetings and baby preparations, foundation work and family time, but tonight had proven what I'd always suspected. The best revenge truly was a life well lived and shared. In the car, Sophia fell asleep against my shoulder while James dozed in his car seat. Alexander navigated San Francisco's streets with easy familiarity, this city that had become our kingdom through choice rather than birthright. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, catching my reflective mood. The girl who left here 11 years ago. What would she think of all this? She'd probably be shocked, maybe a little scared of how big it all became. I think she'd be relieved, I decided, to know the pain had purpose, that everything broken got rebuilt better, including the family, especially the family. We drove past the neighborhood where I'd first apartment hunted, with such hope, past the office, where I'd learned to transform pain into power, past the hospital where both children had been born. Each landmark told part of our story. The empire built from ashes, the love that multiplied rather than divided, the family that chose growth over stagnation. At home, we tucked sleeping children into beds, small emperors of their own futures. Whatever paths they chose, they'd walk them knowing love supported rather than controlled them. The patterns had broken, new ones had formed. "I love you," I told Alexander as we settled into our own bed. Impossibly, statistically, and completely. "Those are my words," he protested sleepily. "We share everything, remember, even romantic mathematics. Especially romantic mathematics." I lay awake a bit longer, hand resting on my growing belly, thinking about the journey from heartbreak to here. The betrayals that had seemed devastating had become footnotes in a larger story of triumph. The family that had failed me had found redemption. The empire built from necessity had become a vehicle for others' dreams. Tomorrow I'd wake to children's laughter and challenging emails to foundation responsibilities and family dynamics. I'd navigate it all imperfectly but authentically, teaching my children through example that success meant defining life on your own terms. But tonight in this quiet moment, I simply felt grateful for the pain that had pushed me forward, for the success that let me pull others up, for the family that had learned to love without limits. The girl who'd fled San Francisco had become a woman who'd conquered it. But more importantly, she'd become someone who shared the kingdom gladly, knowing true power lay not in ruling, but in empowering. Good night, Empire. I whispered to the sleeping city beyond our windows. Tomorrow we build again. Looking back at this story now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a moment when those who should have supported you most became your biggest obstacles? When family chose betrayal over belief in your dreams? If you're struggling with family who doesn't understand your ambitions, who tries to make you smaller to fit their comfort zone, remember this: your dreams are valid. Your ambitions matter. You deserve love that multiplies your possibilities, not diminishes them. Sometimes the families we're born into aren't the ones that help us grow. Sometimes we have to build our own choosing people who see our potential and cheer as we reach for it. That's not betrayal. That's survival. That's growth. That's love in its truest form. If my story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their dreams matter more than others' expectations. Like this video if you believe in supporting ambitions rather than limiting them. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over betrayal of building empires from ashes. And comment below, what dreams are you pursuing despite others' doubts? Let's build a community of people who lift each other up. Thank you for joining me on this journey from heartbreak to empire. Remember, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. You're stronger than their doubts, bigger than their boxes, and capable of more than they dare imagine. Until next time, keep building your empire. The world needs what you have to offer.